me? Can you hear me okay, Justin? Great. Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to the City Council meeting of the Blue Lake City. This is December 10th, 2024. I will call this meeting to order. Our first order of business, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would you establish a quorum of the council, please? Yes, Mayor Jones. Here. Mayor Present. Council member Moore.
Present.
Council members Stefani.
Here.
Council member
Here.
Thank you. We're on item 3, approval of the agenda. I'll start with council. Is there anyone that would like to move anything around on the agenda or change anything?
I would like to, this is a weird question. I'm wondering if we can duplicate number 5, in our agenda and bring that, a second time during this meeting before the newly sworn in council. Can we do that?
What do you mean by duplicate? Do it twice?
So that the new council can potentially, appoint the city clerk for a particular term as opposed to just for tonight's meeting.
So just to let council know, Tony will be resigning her duties with the city at the end of this month. She'll be going to take a new position. So this will be just for this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right.
Give you some feedback from people that are on that. They say
I'm going to open it up for public hearing just a minute. Okay. Are there any other changes that anyone would like from the council? Okay, I will open it up to the public. Go ahead, Kit. What did you want to say? So, Kit, you need to go to the podium.
right. Okay. No, this is technical. Crazy. People online and the council voices are garbled so far.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that information. I'll try to get closer.
That might be a Zoom thing.
Okay. If there's no more discussion from council, I'll open it up to public. Is there anyone that would like to change anything on the agenda that has been posted from public? No, back to the council for a motion, a second, and a vote. So moved.
Excuse me,
Oh.
can I ask, is Gary gonna do the full presentation for the housing element? Is that part of the plan for tonight? Or just a public hearing without the presentation? The same as we had last time? Okay. Sorry,
Alarm.
I just have a concern that we have a really full agenda and the new council has an awful lot to get through tonight. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done to alleviate some of that. Or if there's a desire to do that.
I think you guys can get through most of this.
Yeah.
I think this is just routine, what we do every time we see the new council. And I think you can get through. I think it looks more heavy than it really actually is.
Okay, there was a motion and a second. Is that right? Okay, motion made
Second.
by Angela Shull, seconded by Chris Fire to approve the agenda as delivered. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Was that an aye?
Said aye.
Okay. It passes unanimously. Public comment. This is the time when the public is invited to present petitions, make announcements, or provide other information to the City Council that is relevant to the scope of authority of the City of Blue Lake that is not on the agenda. The Council may provide up to 15 minutes for this public input session. To assure that each individual presentation is heard, the Council may uniformly impose time limitations of 3 minutes to each individual presentation. The public will be given the opportunity to address items that are on the agenda at the time the council takes up each specific agenda item. Is there anyone here for a public comment? Seeing no one, we'll move on then.
Julie Christie has her hand up.
Oh, Julie. Okay, Julie, you had a public comment on a non-agenda item?
Yes, Julie Christie. I'm mostly checking the audio for tonight for Zoom. Is it sounding good for you guys?
Yes, very good.
Okay, and a special thank you to Tony and Justin getting out the Zoom link for us. We really appreciate it, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing no hands on Zoom and in the audience, we will move on to item 5. City Clerk assignment. We will consider appointing Tony Quigley to the position of interim city clerk. And staff is recommending the temporary appointment of Tony Quigley to the position of city clerk. The prior city clerk resigned from employment from the city on November 29th, 2024. In order to conduct the business of the city and the city council, it is necessary to appoint an interim clerk until such time as the duties can be reassigned. Office Assistant Tony Quigley has been acting as the deputy city clerk for many months. She has been attending council meetings and the meetings of the planning commission to learn the duties of the clerk. As the city clerk will conduct the tie-breaking process for the city council seat, it is necessary to appoint someone to this position prior to that action taking place. Any discussion from council about this before I open it up to public? Okay. All right. Anyone on the public side that would like to address this issue? No. Back to council. So the action is to appoint Tony Quigley to the position of city clerk on an interim basis until such time as the council takes further action.
Motion is read.
I'll second.
Motion made by Christopher Edgar, seconded by Elise Scafani. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes. Welcome,
Welcome, Tony.
Tony.
For 20 days.
Welcome. 21 days. All right, we are on item 5, resolution number 20241235. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Blue Lake declaring the results of a municipal election held November 5th, 2024, and determining the process for the resolution of a tie. And this is a discussion and action item. We have quite a long summary from our attorney about this issue. The County of Humboldt Elections and Voter Registration Office has certified the November 5th, 2024 Blue Lake municipal election results and has issued a final canvass, which is attached to the proposed resolution. As it stands, Christopher Fire received 233 votes, Michelle Lewis Lusso, 285, Christopher Edgar, 210, Adeline Jones, 245, Verda, Winona, and Pitts, 148, Kat Napier, 245, and John Sawatsky, 250. Would the attorney like to guide the council as to what is needed to certify the results?
Sure. So there's a resolution before you that we don't certify the results. So the results have already been certified by the county elections. We essentially accept the results and declare them as the results for the city. And so based on the certified results, Ms. Lewis Lusso and Mr. Sawatsky should be declared elected as members of the city council for full terms. Kat Napier and Adeline Jones each received the third highest vote totals and are therefore tied for the remaining council seat to be filled at this election. Christopher Fryer, Christopher Edgar, and Verda Pitts did not receive sufficient votes, but as we know, Chris Fryer will continue as an appointed member of the city council for the remainder of former council member McKay's term. Notably different than most years is a process to resolve a tie. The California Elections Code gives the council essentially two options to resolve a tie. The first is by lot, which is a term used to define a randomized process such as drawing names from a hat, flipping a coin, drawing straws, drawing rocks, whatever randomized process. I've seen them all used. The other option, which is not an option for the council, is a runoff election. And the reason it's not available for the council is the council would have had to determine prior to this election to resolve ties by runoff, which is something for a future council to consider. If a runoff is something that the council would want for a future tie, we'd need to do that before the next general municipal election. So tonight we're left with a randomized process to choose between two candidates. The draft resolution proposes a process that the council can amend before adopting the resolution if it so chooses. But the process that is in the resolution, as detailed in the staff report, is, first we'd invite both candidates up to the dais to oversee the process, but the city clerk would write the names of each candidate on a piece of paper, identical piece of paper. The paper would then be placed in a sealed envelope, identical envelope with no outward markings or distinguishing characteristics. Those two envelopes and nothing else would be deposited into a container and shuffled. I think we can offer both candidates the opportunity to shuffle the box if they want to, or it can just be shuffled once. That's either way is fine. Either the city clerk or a designee of the city clerk would then draw from the container one envelope, which shall be opened, and the name appearing within the envelope would be declared the winner and seated as a member of the city council. So that's the process that's outlined in the resolution. This is the time now at this agenda item for the council to consider whether you want to stick with those procedures, choose something different, flip a coin, whatever it may be. It just has to be a randomized process that gives each of the two candidates a fair shot at winning. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, that process is in the resolution. So if you want to amend it in any way, now is the time to do so.
So we would pass this resolution and then we would have the tie-breaking ceremony,
Correct.
for a better word. Okay. All right. Questions from council before I open it up to public?
I just had a thought that maybe if we have more than two pieces of paper or envelopes in the hat, maybe it's just a speck more random. If say we had 10 and 5 of them were for one candidate, 5 for the other, maybe it offers a little better shuffle kind of thing.
Well, in part, it depends on the size of the container. Erin and I were talking about using that hat that she has, and I'm not sure with two letter size envelopes they'd be sufficiently jumbled. And so we got a bigger box with a lid that you can really jumble. As long as there's 5 and 5, 2 and 2, whatever, 1 and 1, I'm fine with that. But we did get a bigger receptacle just so that it can actually jumble and doesn't, just stay where it is. So up to the council, but that was the thought there.
Seems fine.
1, 2, 4, 6. What are you thinking?
12.
Let's do that.
I have 4.
Okay.
And I just
All
did
right.
that so each could grab one, and so there wouldn't be anything weird about my envelopes different
Well, if
than
there's
your
4,
envelope.
you could put two
I only
names.
have 2 same exact size pieces of paper for the name. I mean,
Okay.
can't you just do 2? Yeah, just
I mean, it's 50-50, whether it's 1 and 1 or
Right.
10 and 10.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Okay.
so
make it complicated.
All right. Any other questions from council about this process before I open it up to public hearing, and then we'll bring it back for a possible vote? Did you have a question, Angela? Okay. All right, at this time, I'll open it up to the public before we pass this resolution accepting the results of the election. Seeing no comments. Oh, hello.
Hi, is this on? Yeah. So I guess I'm doing public comment as a
Okay, go ahead.
member of the public,
So-
not as the clerk recorder or registrar of voters at the moment. I just wanted that to be clear. Um, is there a reason why we're not flipping a coin? It seems significantly more straightforward and intuitive.
It's sometimes hard to flip a coin. Like maybe it doesn't flip very.
All right, that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Juan.
I never can flip coins good.
Julie, you have a comment about this process?
Yep. Yes, I want to thank Juan for being there and giving his 2 cents on the matter. I do think that Mandy maybe said we only had 2 slips of paper that are the right size, so maybe clarify that after comment that. And I just want to thank everybody serving who ran, and I really appreciate all of you and your service to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, moving back to council. So we're going to adopt our resolution number 20241235, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Blue Lake declaring the results of a municipal election held November 5th, 2024, and determining the process for the resolution of a tie. Four envelopes? Four envelopes? It looks like we're going to do four.
So
Four envelopes.
originally I had just brought 4, so each candidate could choose an envelope. So there was nothing weird about the just trying to keep that as random. But I only cut. I mean, we could cut 2 more. Or if you want 4 envelopes.
And just for the council, I did consider flipping a coin, and it is a lot easier, except who gets to call it? Does it hit the floor? What happens if it hits the floor and then hits something?
Yeah, I know.
Does it start heads? Does it start tails? Do we catch it and flip it? So it's much easier, but
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like,
Falls off
there's
the
a lot
thumb.
of people. People are going to complain about it.
lose is best out of 3. So anyway,
Okay, so it sounds at this time that the city clerk is going to write my name on 2 and Catherine's name on 2. They're each going to go into the 4 envelopes. And we're going to shake the box. But I'd like to pass this resolution first, I think, before we do the assist. Correct. Okay. So I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 20241235.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Elise Scafani, seconded by Chris Fire to adopt resolution number 20241235. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Four envelopes. Do you want to go up and you and Kat go up? Did you spell my name?
Oh, so just put an A on it.
Pat, do you want to send her 2 random envelopes? You want to make that's for your life. Yeah, it seems to start health area in the schools. I think someone has never taken. Maybe you put it in the same. Yeah. People kids.
Use a tab.
Okay, so get the stairs. Right. We're down next time.
You can put the lid on and then really shake them.
You get to do it.
It's up to the city clerk.
Shake them real good.
Is everybody satisfied with the shakes?
They had a tie too. Yeah. No. As my father-in-law would go, oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, boy.
Pardon?
We haven't sworn anybody in
Yeah.
yet. She just won the election. That's it.
We have to seat the new council. No.
Yeah, I think I see.
No. She just won the election, Adeline. We haven't sworn. They're not sworn in yet.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. We have to swear them in before we leave.
You're still the mayor for a few more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we had the tiebreaker and Catherine Napier won the tie. I would like to say that I've loved being the mayor for all these years. I've been mayor for 12 years, which I think is a record for the first term and 8 the last term. We got through a lot of really tough times with COVID and doing Zoom, and we got through that. I'm really proud of our roundabout that I advocated for when I was first mayor, a beautiful gateway to our town. I was part of the groundbreaking of the Annie Mary Rail Trail, which is the beginning or the ending of our Great Redwood Trail, depending on how you look at it. The 2 wonderful bridges going over Powers Creek that I advocated for, and of course, assisting in getting our town square across the street from the post office has been my greatest joy and proudest moment. Seeing our Christmas tree there last Saturday was really wonderful. I just want to thank our staff and everyone associated with the city of Blue Lake, and to the new council members. If you love Blue Lake even half as much as I do, then we're going to be fine, just fine.
Thank you, Adeline.
Okay. Do you have any parting word, Angela?
No, it's been uh in some cases it feels like the last 2 years have flown by really, really quickly. I was saddened to not feel like I had the time to take the opportunity to run for reelection. But there's time later on, so I'm looking forward to that. But I do, Adeline, really want to thank you for your years of service, not just these last 12 years, but beyond that. You are a central figure here in Blue Lake, and that's been very appreciated. And your love of this community is without question. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Christopher Edgar.
Yeah, I just want to say to the new guys coming up here, good luck. I hope you do. I hope you have fun with it and bring all the projects that you guys wish to have in our town, make it a better place. I enjoyed being up here with all the ups and downs. It's really amazing to see all you guys here now because when I first started, even though it was only 2 years ago, there was nobody in here. There was nobody running for council. This is really exciting to have everybody involved now.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, we are now on item 8, new council members, pledge of civility and oath of office.
So I guess.
So, and the members come up, new council members.
Yeah.
This is a single life pledge of civility. You have to name and raise your right. Raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. The manner in which we govern ourselves is often as important as the decisions we take. The council's collective decisions will be better and truer to our mission. Differing views, the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered.
The council's collective decisions will be better and truer from the differing views have opportunity to be fully vetted and considered.
All those who appear before the council have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness. We value and
All those who appear before the council have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness. We value and
accordingly, we commit to conduct ourselves with civility and courtesy to both those with whom the council interacts and to each other. We also pledge to endeavor to correct ourselves should our conduct fall below the standard.
Accordingly, we commit to conduct ourselves with civility and courtesy to both those with whom the council interacts and to each other. We also pledge to endeavor to correct ourselves should our conduct fall below the standard.
Have them sign that before we go. Each of you want to just take a moment to sign that pledge. Sign a date. The City of Blue Lake Oak Office, State of California, County of Humboldt. Do solemnly swear
that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of California, and install and born in the state. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and to the Constitution of the State of California. That I will keep this obligation freely for purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties on which the House voucher.
See you around, Chris.
Please be with you. Your name tag. You're not gonna.
Good to see you. Huh?
Thanks.
Florida.
What here?
Good. What's it done? Thank
Wait a minute.
Appreciate it.
No.
Packing in the luggage here. Just packing in the packet. It's nice. Oh, so here we are.
Yeah. Great secret's gonna be out, but I can't live without sticky notes.
Really?
I did my homework just in case. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Congratulations. I know it looks like we have a pretty full packet tonight, but I have full confidence that you guys are going to do great. But the next order of business is to designate a mayor and a mayor pro tem. And so that's a discussion that you guys as council members will have amongst yourselves. The mayor is not an elected, it's an appointed position amongst the council members. So if you guys want to proceed, if there's someone who wants to step up, sometimes it's whoever's not in the room gets chosen as the mayor. But you guys are all here, so the mayor obviously facilitates the meetings. The mayor has the same rights as a single council member, and the mayor pro tem fills in for the mayor in the event that the mayor is gone. So probably the biggest duty that the mayor has is really facilitating the meetings and making sure that meetings are conducted according to the Brown Act, Robert's Rules of or Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and that we conduct orderly business. And we will be having a training for all council members. Ryan does a new council member training. That's really informative. And then we did provide you guys with primers on kind of the Cliff Note versions of the Rules of Order and the Brown Act and things as well. So
Are we supposed to do
you
that?
could
right
draw
now?
straws,
Yeah.
flip a coin,
it.
put your name in a hat.
Well, we'll do process of elimination. I got set up being put up in this seat, but I would prefer not to be mayor at this time, to be quite frank. I think it's going to be I really do prefer to listen, even though I'm chatting and I'm being playful tonight. Um, I think for my first go around up here, and hopefully there'll be maybe a second, I'd rather follow another thing.
Yeah,
So,
I'm the same. I'm still working on the process. I just
Yeah.
watch and learn.
okay.
I would like to nominate John Sawetsky, as I have a lot of learning to do as well.
And I would like to second that.
That's a lot to take on right now.
I'll third it.
Accept the nomination. See how I do, everybody? It's been a 10th night already.
And then we choose the mayor pro
Yeah.
tem. I would like to choose Elise Scafani or I would like to nominate Elise Scafani for the mayor pro tem. I'm not sure who
Yeah, second.
was supposed to do that.
Third.
Thank you. I would accept that nomination. Thank you. Well done. Okay.
Well,
Now,
Now do we need to change?
I would,
Make a motion.
I would just say, it sounds like there's no objections to those two nominations, so, by unanimous consent, we can make those final, and you can take your seat in the middle.
You
And get your,
Moving already.
grab your gavel.
Good evening, everybody. It's my first official meeting as mayor, so bear with me as we kind of adjust to this new setting for myself and for the new council. It's gonna be a ride for sure. So I believe we are on item 10, which is City of Blue Lake Commission appointments. This is a discussion action item. And Mandy, would you like to fill us in on what the next steps are?
So right now, the city has a couple of vacancies on our commissions, and we have been advertising to fill those vacancies. You might see postings at the post office. We regularly keep our Madiac posting up to date with current commissioners' vacancies. And then we also do subsequent postings and noticing and advertising to try and attract other individuals to apply for those positions. So we have an opening on Parks and Recreation, and then we have an opening on Public Safety Commission as well. We did receive an application from Gloria Baker for the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we have provided her information. And just as a personal note, worked with Gloria on several events with Parks and Recreation. She's a very enthusiastic Blue Lake community member. She is a staffer on the Arcata Chamber. She has been instrumental in helping to bring events to Blue Lake, including the Blue Lake Sunday Markets. She's also been very involved in the Oyster Festival in Arcata. Just a really wonderful person to work with, very organized, and we're really excited that she came forward to apply for Parks and Recreation. And just from a staff recommendation, we enthusiastically support her appointment and think that she'll be a great asset.
I have a question. I see the length of time living and working in Blue Lake, 4 years. Does she reside in Blue Lake?
She does reside in Blue
Okay.
Lake, yes.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, some of our commissions have a residency requirement. Some of our commissions also have a sphere of influence. And then other commissions have different requirements, maybe based on someone's area of expertise, or maybe they own a business in town or work in town. So the different commissions sometimes have different designations.
Is Gloria here today?
You know, I am not sure if Gloria, she could be on Zoom. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think in the interest of time, if we can put this forward for, I think in January's next meeting for consideration. It would be nice to be able to interview her in person here. So I make a motion to move this to the the January City Council meeting.
I would second that motion.
We have a first and a second.
You can take it to the public before we vote.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's take it to the public for comment. Any comments? Let's start with the first row. Does anyone have any comments? Second row, seeing none. Third row, any comments? All right, anybody on Zoom? We have one on Zoom. Julie Christie, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor Swatsky, thank you very much. I want to also comment, we didn't quite get public comment on the last one, but congratulations, you guys, well appointed. As far as this item, in the past, not all applicants for commissions have come in and spoken in person. Some have, some haven't. So it is definitely up to the council's discretion. However, I'm just kind of throwing that out there as well. And again, thank you for all your service, and I look forward to this new council.
last call for comment. Seeing none, we're bringing it back to the council for further discussion and a vote.
I just want to share that it seems that we have some difficulty filling our commission seats and having folks stay in those positions for a period of time. And so I think maybe it's a good idea to at least have folks attend the meeting where they would be appointed. Because to this point, we've appointed a number of people that never attended a meeting before and actually attended very few meetings after being appointed, and then would resign and that sort of thing. So really nice if we might make that a requirement, or at least strongly encouraged that applicants come to the meeting at which they will be appointed.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, I support Gloria for sure. She'd be a great asset for the city. I think we should just knock it out now. But if we want to bump until January, that's fine. But I'm going to support her then too. So I look forward to it.
I've never met her, and I'm the liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission, and I've never seen her at a meeting or met her. So I'd like the opportunity to meet her before she's appointed.
I do agree. I think that if you are going to be on a commission, you should come to the meeting and at least show some face and answer a few questions.
And to acknowledge, Chris, I mean, there's really some great credentials there, but it'd be nice to have a face-to-face and some questions. So thank
I
you.
look forward to getting her on the council or the commission.
What are the next steps?
You call for a vote.
Call for a vote. I'm calling for a vote. Pardon. You're good.
Better than I.
So let's call for a vote on tabling this till January
January 28th, I think.
28th.
Okay. I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed? Hearing none? It passes unanimously. On to the next item.
I did.
The City of Blue Lake Housing Element Presentation and Public Hearing. For this item, I apologize, everyone.
Oh, you're good, Tom.
So we are going to be hearing from Gary Reese on a presentation on the public housing element. Gary, you're here for comments?
Mr. Mayor, first is to just formally declare that the public hearing is open.
Okay,
And then we'll
thank
close it at the end.
We're declaring the public hearing open. Thank you.
Oh, shoot. Gary. Is it the same project you've been involved for?
No, it's modified.
Yeah, and it's on there though. Something to plug in? Oh, I got it. On there. Camera. So when you only do that camera temporarily, one that's goes to Zoom, you can unplug that one for now. They can still be able to hear, but they would hit the camera. You copy it on your computer, and then plug your camera back in.
Share screen.
There you go.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome new council members.
Thank you.
Definitely met some of you. Hi, John. Hi. And worked with other you before. I haven't met you, Michelle, but look forward to working with you. Nice to meet you. So, yeah, I have a presentation. It's probably 20, 30 minutes. I'll leave it up to you guys if you want me to give that right now or if you'd rather wait till the January meeting. Lisa had mentioned in the interest of time, maybe you don't need to hear the full presentation.
I think
the public's
work.
here, so I think they're here for that most likely.
Okay.
So I think that would be fine
Yeah.
if you want to give the full thing. How long is it here?
20, 30 minutes, depending on how fast I talk.
He talks fast.
Well, I did want to bring up that as the community has been asking for a town hall meeting on this topic for some time, um, I wonder if the council would like to consider having a town hall meeting before the housing element update is adopted, and if so, potentially that the presentation could be held over to a town hall meeting if desired.
We have a lot of people in here right now, though, that could take advantage of hearing Gary's presentation. This is the most we've had. This is a lot of people.
Meeting right here.
Well, and maybe we can do 2 tracks on this. If we had the presentation, come up, we could certainly do for a lot of folks. Yes, we have tracks that we could take on this. We could certainly have Gary do a presentation tonight, but also to help facilitate getting that knowledge out there. Because I'm not going to yell into the mic. I don't know how to boost
You know
it.
what, it's actually mic'd.
No,
So,
Which is
sorry. So yeah.
No
so
wonder
folks-
this isn't working.
Got
it. Yep. Okay. So yes, I can speak louder, most certainly. We have 2 tracks that I see. I'd love for Gary to be able to do a 20-minute presentation. Also, it would be dandy if we could get this presentation posted online, hopefully by the end of the week, if that is a reasonable request. And that way, those who aren't in attendance but maybe have been watching this can review that presentation at their leisure. The more that we can saturate the community with that presentation, I think the better that we can create a consensus in the community.
I will remind you, there's a staff shortage right now. We're working on it. So the city, of course, it's probably going to be a little cramped.
I'm
Of course.
sorry.
And we
what?
do have this loaded onto the city's website. It's
so that
Perfect.
your presentation has been on the city's website for
both planning commission and police
Yeah.
council meeting, or
this
housing.
presentation has been
oh, you mean
online.
just as
Yeah.
far as the PDF,
Yeah.
not
It's
the actual recording.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been uploaded for several weeks.
But the full
The
presentation.
full presentation. Yes.
Okay.
Well, what I would like to do, maybe with Gary's help, is to take this recording or the recording from the last one, whichever presentation you favor, and we could do the slideshow and match it with the video so that folks can hear you speak about each of your slides as you go through, and then we can post that to the website.
Picking a good one, I like the planning commission one a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Just kidding. Okay. That sounds good. So we can bring that up. I also have some handouts, which I think will be helpful.
Please.
To the council and any member of the public who'd like to view it. But I'll go through what's here. Thank you.
Which one is it?
I should say agenda item 11.
Agenda item 11?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, tell me up. Oh, wait. Gosh.
He's in the way room.
No worries.
Sending.
Thank you.
Anybody who would
Awesome.
It's supposed to be some correspondence. Sitting here.
So before I begin, just go through what's in here. We've got a vacant site inventory map, which I'm also going to have brought up on the screen. We also have a table that goes along with that map and gives a little bit of more information about the vacant sites and projected development potential. We also have a table that's from the CEQA document prepared for the housing element update. And this table essentially shows all of the implementation programs proposed by the housing element update. And then because it's from the CEQA document, there is a discussion of potential for environmental effects of those. So I think that'd be helpful as we go through, that you have this map in your hand, you have the table that goes along with it, and then you have all of the programs, because those are going to be the 2 primary subjects in my presentation. So I have a few things I'll say before I need to be using the PowerPoint, so I can go ahead and do that. Just to point out that, as recommended in the staff report in your packet, we're not looking for any action. This is just a public hearing to receive information from staff, to ask questions of staff, and to receive public comments. And hopefully that'll be helpful to the new council members to get more acquainted with the housing element update. So before I jump into the PowerPoint, once that's available, just give a little
yellow teasing.
Oh, got me. All right, I'll wait.
My password? It's the Wi-Fi password. Oh, it's been a year and a half. Don't worry about it. See if I can figure it out. It's good. Stay anywhere. We're waiting on your phone.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to get it via email from Justin.
Oh, I see.
No.
Yeah, sorry, John. I don't even remember it. I don't remember how I even got it.
I should just, yeah.
Is the guest one on?
I'm gonna just offline it now.
By the way, when you get it, you're gonna need to turn it off because it's too slow for anything.
Share.
Uh-oh. Sometimes I have to do it myself just to get things to work. The library one might be working.
Hold that on. Then I.
We got it.
And be loud at the same time.
Yeah, apologies for the delay. I was working
No,
on
you
this
take
this
care.
afternoon and didn't have a chance to
Gee,
get
it's
it.
like
The
my
city
first day in
staff.
office and Michelle.
What's
So it's like my first day in office, your presentation.
Yes.
Oh, there it is. So Gary, what might help,
Yeah.
as you're going through, if you're referring to a slide, tell us what page it's on.
Certainly.
And then that way, when we match the video to your presentation, that'll help you
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah, I'll maybe hold it up, just point it out. Those that have a copy. So we got the slideshow going. Great. All right. So really what I want to focus on tonight is what the housing element update does and just kind of focus on that as opposed to giving all that background information I've given in past presentations. It still takes a bit of time to explain that, but hopefully it's a little more focused and helps folks understand what it would mean to adopt this. So before I jump into what the element does, I'd like to just give a little background and really kind of revisit points that were made as part of the past presentations, what I think are key for folks to understand. And the first one is that the city has not had a compliant or certified housing element in 20 years. And the consequences of non-compliance have become more severe in recent years, as we've discussed in prior meetings. As previously noted, the city could be sued by the state, by pro-housing groups, developers. The city would also not be eligible for various funding sources that are important to a small city with limited resources. The state could take away local control over residential development, especially affordable housing. So those are some of the consequences that are out there today, and why the previous council was taking getting a certified housing element seriously. So now the city's prepared a draft housing element update. I believe most of us are aware of that. It's on the city's website. It's been circulated for public review for some time. It has been reviewed by the state Department of Housing and Community Development. They have found it to meet the requirements of state housing law. It has been recommended to the council by the Planning Commission. So from staff's perspective, it's important that the city adopt and implement this element update to ensure it does not open itself up to potential consequences of non-compliance. So that kind of sets the stage for, the kind of regulatory environment nowadays when it relates to housing element updates in the state of California. So with that, I'd like to kind of revisit two of the more important things that the housing element update does. And I touched on these in past presentations, but I'd like to focus on them a little more narrowly so that those points are clear. So one of the first things that it does that's important is it identifies vacant sites in the city that can accommodate the city's RENA allocation, which when you add the fifth and sixth cycles together is 34 units. And the city has to do that because it hasn't had a certified element in the fifth cycle. Secondly, another important thing it does is it proposes implementation programs to assist the city in complying with state housing law by ensuring the city's regulations do not inhibit the development of housing for all income levels. So now I'd like to go into the PowerPoint presentation. If you could change to the next slide. Thank
So
you. Great. So what you're looking at there is the page here. It's the vacant sites inventory map. And this is an important map from the housing element update because it shows the vacant sites that are identified as where the city's RENA allocation can be met. And you'll see on here that we're categorizing or classifying these sites in different ways, depending on what we see as their developability. So we have essentially three categories. In green, we have the likely developable. In yellow, we have the questionably developable. And in the red, we have the likely not developable. And what you'll see on that map is that most of what we're identifying for these vacant sites is that they're likely developable. You know, they don't have a lot of environmental constraints. They have good access, utilities available, things like that. So those are the sites where, you know, we're seeing the majority of development potential happening for the city to meet its RENA allocation. If you look at that map a little closer, you're going to see some of the largest sites are in the former industrial park, now Powers Creek District. Those are in the opportunity zone, which is a zone that was adopted in 2021. Then you'll see a few other large sites on the west side of the city. That's in the planned development residential zone. You'll see a larger site near the downtown. That's a mixed use zone. And then the remainder of them are, I believe, mostly single family residential in the single family residential neighborhoods that the city has. So that's really the zones that we're saying we have vacant sites in that can meet the RENA allocation. Your R1 or single family residential, your PDR, your planned development residential, mixed use, and the opportunity zones. Could you switch to the next slide, please? So right here is a draft of our current zoning map. It's a mapping product we developed recently as part of kind of the modernization of the general plan. I'm quite excited about it. It took a while to prepare it. And it's in draft form, so staff's reviewing it. There's a few little things that need to be amended. But besides identifying vacant sites that are already zoned to allow housing and have reasonable development standards, we also have to assign income categories to those projected units. And those categories, as you will see in this table here, that was passed out for anybody who's looking at this, they are above moderate, moderate, and lower. And so above moderate is basically nice housing. Moderate is typical housing or what some people call market rate, and lower is housing that's affordable to low-income persons. So as part of this, we have to say, okay, these sites are available for residential development, but in what income category? So, you know, you have the map here that shows the various zones. For above moderate, which is nicer housing, we're showing the R1 zone, which is mainly the northeastern side of the city and most of its residential development. We're saying the mixed use zone, which is primarily around the downtown, and we're saying the PDR zone, which is on the west side of the city. So that's where the above moderate, nicer housing is projected to be developed in the housing element update. So that's above moderate. Let's talk about moderate or kind of typical or market rate. We're projecting that that would happen also on the west side of the city in the PDR zone and in the opportunity zone as well. And then lastly, you have the lower income category. Now that's the harder one to determine where those units are going to go. Not any part of the city and not any site is necessarily suitable for lower income. And the way the state looks at it is these are usually larger lots that allow higher densities, have flexible development standards, things like that. So what we're projecting in the housing element update is the appropriate location for that is the opportunity zone, which was created in 2021. So I think one really important thing to point out, and I'm not sure this was clear in past presentations, is that the housing element is not changing the zones on properties in the city. So what you see here in the zoning map, that would remain. And those zones are adequate to accommodate the city's RENA allocation. So really what we're doing here in this vacant sites inventory is we're saying, here are sites that are already zoned for residential development that can accommodate the city's, regional housing needs assessment allocation. So that is one of the more important things that the housing element update does, is it identifies those vacant sites. So now I'd like to go into talking about the implementation programs. If you could go to the next slide, please. So when you look at this table here, table 4, I believe it is, from the CEQA document, and you can also find this information in the housing element update. You'll see there's 23 programs. Now, initially, when you look at this table, you'll see policies. What you really want to go to is the next page where the implementation programs start. So there are 23 of those, and these are things the city needs to implement to comply with state housing law. Ensure it isn't inhibiting meeting its share of the regional housing need. These have been reviewed by Department of Housing and Community Development. They've found them to be consistent with state law and move the city forward into complying with state law. So this slide here kind of gives a summary of some of the more important ones. And what I mean by more important is these are actually proposing amendments to the city's zoning code. A lot of the other measures you could consider relatively benign, but these are actually proposing to change the city's regulations. So, the first one there, you'll see proposing amendment for consistency with current state housing law, and it lists the programs that relate to that on that slide. And the next is allowing multifamily projects without discretionary review by right. That's a very important requirement of state housing law, and I'll talk about that a little more in the next few slides. And then also to remove potential constraints to the development of multifamily housing. That's another thing that would be accomplished by these programs. And then also the fourth bullet, to comply with requirements for objective design standards, which is where the state has moved with standards of review for housing projects. And then lastly, and this one's a little more minor, but it still would be an amendment, is to reduce the potential for confusion regarding the applicability of the city's design guidelines. So I'd like to go into each one of these in a little more detail, and that, once I do, will essentially conclude my presentation. So there isn't too much more, but I would like to go into more detail on each one of these because they're important for folks to understand. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this one here, ensuring consistency with current state housing law. There's a number of programs you'll see that relate to this, and they're listed there. So if you want to look at them in this table here, you can. But I listed categories of what those are related to, and really these are cleanup amendments because basically the city's code is out of date and it's not consistent with state housing law in regards to these things that are listed here. ADUs, manufactured housing, single room occupancy, and so on. So these are things that the city needs to update to comply with state housing law. Some of them, the code says nothing about these things. Some of them it does, but they're just not current with current state housing law. So really these are more cleanup amendments to make sure we're consistent and compliant. And those would probably be some of the first things that we would do as far as implementing the housing element update. Next slide, please. So next we have creating and applying a multifamily combining zone. I actually have 2 slides for this because it's important. There's been a bit of confusion about what exactly this is proposing to do. So first off, I'd like to point out, combining zones are not a new zoning tool to the city of Blue Lake. The city has a couple combining zones. They're listed on that slide there. They have the planned development combining zone. That's meant to be applied to the PDR zone, really on the west side of the city. And essentially, it's like an overlay on top of the base zoning district, which in that case would be PDR. That one was created years ago, and really it's meant to allow flexibility in design, clustering of development, protection of environmental constraints like wetlands and creeks and things like that. So that's the purpose of that combining zone. Then next, we have the special density combining zone. It's an interesting one. It allows densities to be lowered or increased depending And it has limits in which can happen. I think you can go down to 1 unit per 3,000 square feet or up to a couple acres per unit. So the city does have a special density combining zone already. And then lastly, we have this historic overlay. It was created as a zoning tool. I don't necessarily know that it's ever been applied. That it's applied it to their own property, it would have limitations on what you could do with historic structures, and that concerns some folks in the past. It also could be applied to a district like the downtown to protect it as a historic district. Anyway, so combining zones are not a new zoning tool, and essentially what this multifamily combining zone would do is it'd be a new combining zone tool for allowing multifamily housing by right to meet the state's requirement for having by right zoning for apartments or multifamily housing. And I think it's important to point out that HCD has required by right zoning for decades. Blue Lake's just never wanted to comply with it. It's one of the main reasons Blue Lake has not had a certified housing element in 20 years. This by right zoning requirement was a sticking point. So what we're doing with this multifamily combining zone is we're saying essentially this would be applied to a single site as opposed to an entire zone. In the past, HCD has asked the city, you have this PDR zone on the west side of the city. It has most of your development potential according to your housing element. We would like you to make that a by right zoning district. So if you did that, every property that has PDR zoning would allow by right multifamily. That's not something the city has ever wanted to do and still doesn't. And that's why we're creating this combining zone. It's a more targeted or surgical approach in saying, okay, we'll meet that by right requirement, but we'll meet it on an individual basis on single properties, not whole zones. And just so you understand why by right's important, the state believes that if a conditional use permit is required or a discretionary review, that potentially inhibits people from wanting to develop in the community because you have to go through a discretionary review process. You have to go to a public hearing, you have environmental review, you have a whole lot of things that add uncertainty to the approval process. So that's why the state for years has asked for jurisdictions to have a by right zoning district. So this multifamily combining zone is really intended to do that in a very specific and targeted way. Next slide, please.
Gary, can you just clarify though the by right zone? It doesn't negate your zoning regulate. Okay.
That's what this slide does. Yeah. Thank you. So what this would do specifically is it would allow a density of 16 units per acre by right. And as Mandy was pointing out, it would not change other development standards or requirements of a zoning district. It would simply just say, okay, you have all these requirements in this district, we're changing one. It's that if you have to allow a density of 16 units per acre by right or with a building permit, essentially. That's all somebody would have to get. They did point out to the state that under state law, in order to use this, we would need to apply it to sites of 1 acre or larger. There are not a lot of those sites in the city, so it's limited where this could be used. We are anticipating that this would be applied to property zoned opportunity because that's one of the best locations that it could happen. I would like to point out that the maximum density in the opportunity zone is 17.4 units per acre. If that multifamily combining zone were applied, it would not allow density higher than what's currently allowed in the opportunity zone. So it's not increasing density. It's just saying you can do it within the parameters of that zone, but you need to allow it with just a building permit. And right now, the city only allows up to 4 units by right in any zone that allows multifamily housing. You want to do 5 or more units, you need a CUP. The state identifies that as a constraint and a barrier to the development of housing for all income levels. Next slide, please. So next we have removing potential constraints to developing multifamily units. And this is only one program. And essentially what happened here is the state reviewed the city zoning code in detail. And they pointed out a number of standards where they said, well, wait a minute, you guys are requiring different standards in these zones than you are in other zones that allow multifamily housing. They called out PDR, they called out the MU, and they called out the R2 zone. And essentially they said, explain to us how this doesn't inhibit multifamily housing because that would be inconsistent with state housing law. And we reviewed it and we said, well, we can't because it does. And so essentially what we're looking at is development standards being amended to provide consistency between zones allowing multifamily housing, like the R3 zone, opportunity, things like that. These are development standards such as maximum ground coverage, maximum building height, limits on the number of stories, and setbacks. So that's essentially what that one does. If you're interested in really the specifics, please take a look at program HI 19. Next slide, please. So then we go to complying with requirements for objective design standards. Some of you may have heard of this concept of objective design standards. I provided a definition there that is given by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And essentially what they're saying is it doesn't allow personal subjective judgment by a public official like a planning commissioner or city staff. And you have uniformly verifiable standards essentially that a developer and public officials understand before somebody submits an application. And one example of subjective design standards or a subjective review process that was called out by HCD is the city's site plan approval process. It's akin to design review. And in there, the city has these principles to be followed. And take a look at the language that's used there. That's what the state defines as a subjective review process. Things such as a planning commissioner having determined is what's the relationship of this development to adjacent elements and to the community as a whole. That would be a subjective decision-making process. Ensuring harmony with adjacent development, things like that. That's no longer allowed under state housing law. So jurisdictions are pivoting from that type of thing to doing objective design standards. The guidance from the state is that we can still have these, but they're advisory. They're not enforceable. And if the city attempted to use them in that way, that could lead to action by the Housing Accountability Unit at the Department of Housing and Community Development, such as receiving a letter that explains why a decision was made in error, that type of thing, according to state housing law. It could go further than that, but that hasn't happened in many cases where the Attorney General gets involved and sues a community or that type of thing. Next slide, please. So this is the one that's pretty minor, but it's kind of a cleanup. Essentially, there's some confusion according to the state regarding the applicability of the city's design guidelines. So for reference, the city has design guidelines for the downtown, it has it for the mixed use zone, and it has historic design guidelines. And essentially what they pointed out is they said, well, it says projects are subject to these. That sounds like they're enforceable, but they're just guidelines. They're not part of your code. They have subjectivity in them. We don't see these as compliant with state housing law. So essentially, we'd be amending zoning districts to refer to these. That includes the MU zone and the mixed use guidelines. That includes the retail, commercial, or RC zone and the downtown guidelines. And as it notes there, there is an allowance for some discretion in these guidelines in determining whether they're met. And essentially what we would be doing with this more minor amendment is change the language from subject to something like encourage. And we obviously can wordsmith that, but that's the idea. And ultimately what the city would want to do is develop objective design standards that are adopted as part of its code instead of having this reference to a separate guidelines document that's not necessarily enforceable. So that concludes both of those items I wanted to discuss, the vacant sites inventory and these implementation programs. And that concludes my presentation. I'm definitely available to answer any questions that the council or public may have. And before moving on, I would like to point out there was some written public comment received by Lisa Hoover. I don't know if you received that already or they did. Perfect. So yeah, take a look at that as part of the public hearing and public comment that's received. And we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Does the council have any questions for Gary at the time?
I do have one. I saw the letter from the water board about the clearances, the environmental clearances that were granted in the opportunity zone when it was designated for industrial use, and that those clearances may not transfer to a residential use. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. The first thing I would point out is that the water board was not referring to the opportunity zone or that old mill site. They were referring to the leaking underground storage tank sites, which are kind of sprinkled throughout the city where there used to be gas stations, things like that. Those are the sites that the water board has regulatory oversight over. The other one is really, or I should say the Powers Creek District and the old McIntosh Mill is under the oversight of the Department of Toxic Substances Control. So that's a distinction there, and that's something I pointed out in my response to the water board, is that we're not planning for development to happen on any leaking underground storage tank sites. Although those sites may have been cleaned up sufficiently and could be appropriate for residential development, that's not what's planned in the housing element update.
Any other questions from council?
Well, I have a question. I wondered if you know, how to treat some or all those surrounding.
They are not.
We'll go ahead and open up to the public. It's all right. It's okay. Are there any questions from the public? Yes, go ahead. Please state your name if you would.
David Fonte, 311 H Street. Understand the process of housing in general across income levels for the city. It's been going on for quite some time. As far as its necessity at this moment, seems, looking statistically, some 15% of Bay Area cities have complied with the mandated requirement for housing, and only 29 of 538 municipalities in the state are presently following the mandate. How necessary is this within the city of Blue Lake comparatively? I think how incredibly involved we need to get involved in this thing is a little beyond maybe some of the more pressing matters that we need within the city. That's it.
Because there's some interesting statistics. Thanks for sharing.
Any other comments from the public? Moving over to Zoom, we have Julie Christie.
Yes, Gary, thank you for yet again another presentation. Always curious if SHN is paid during our meeting times. It's been a lot. Going back to our housing element, I've been an avid speaker on it for many years now. Many people have, especially Lisa, who wrote in. Our main concerns have been the fact that it is not, in our opinion, reviewing our general plan consistent. Now, every other municipality will have at least one page of their actual update in their slideshow. We only got the cover photo picture, but if you actually go online and you dig and dig and dig, you can find it. And it is very hard to read everything that's being adjusted within this housing element. There's 111 pages. Now, Arcata, they had special planning commission meetings and then it went to council. But they really went through and revised these in chunks and they went through each page by page by page. That's where we need our town hall. And we've been asking for it for a long time now. And these presentations we've been getting are elusive to what's within that element update. It's already been very well stated that we need to have these negatory declarations and these CEQA shortcuts to allow Danco to have the state funding and for our dollar lease. There's a lot going on, and I just feel like we need to definitely break down the actual element, not just a quickie slideshow. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, go ahead, Gary.
So the city accepted funding from the State Department of Housing and Community Development from 2 different programs to work on its housing element update. This has been a 3-year process. The part of the process that was described by the speaker has already happened at the Planning Commission level. We went page by page, line by line, turned a draft into HCD, got a lot of comments back, and kind of did it all over again. So this has been a long road, and folks that weren't there at that time may not have been aware of that. So I just would like the council to know that this has been a long process, and we certainly went through a similar process to what other jurisdictions did for their housing element update.
Thank you, Gary. Last call for public comment. Anybody else?
Hi. Thanks, Gary. I would just still like to request that we do a town hall. I'm glad that there's a full house, but I think that if it could be advertised, then maybe some familiar faces from tonight plus some would be there. So I just would like to see that happen. Thanks.
Bring it back to council for further discussion.
I just want to reiterate that I'm in favor of a town hall.
Mandy, what are the steps to do a town hall if the council so chooses to do so? Can we go ahead and just do that?
I believe it's under your purview to schedule a town hall and you can direct staff to attend.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question. And this is a newcomer. I apologize. I have been doing some homework on this, reading some of the comments, the letters, the um, correspondence that you've had with concerned people who are reading up on it much more than I am. But maybe we don't have time for it tonight, but what are some of the barriers to, like, why is it taking so long? Maybe that's not a very nice question, but I need to know what some of those concerns are and maybe what could a town hall meeting bring to add. And I will open that up to the audience here after you address this.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say one of the big barriers is that the city hadn't had a compliant housing element in years. So in order to take, the city's basically housing element and adapt it to current state housing law, took a lot of work and a lot of back and forth with HCD. And there was a bit of scrutiny of the CEQA process as well. We had prepared an earlier document that was an addendum to a prior initial study, and the public said, no, go back and do a brand new one. So then we went for another funding program, the Regional Early Action Planning Grant Program, which helped pay for the CEQA document. So we wrote a brand new CEQA document and if for people who don't know, that's an environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. So that had to be circulated, responding to public comment, bringing it to the planning commission. So it's been a long process. I'll say in general too, there's concern about growth in the city of Blue Lake, and so there's been a lot of comment received through this process. Like it's been for many years, there's members of this community that are concerned about doing what the state tells them to do in regards to housing or further growth in the community. And that's been going on for 20 years. So that was nothing new to us, but it is something that can prolong the process as we're trying to work through it. So there's just a couple of things off the top of my head that have led to, this long planning process for a housing element update.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Does the council wish to host a meeting in the future?
I do.
Can we do that during a discussion? Can we
Yeah,
direct staff to do that?
You can direct staff to organize and schedule a town hall. Pick a date now. You can ask staff to pick an appropriate date in the future. I noticed the staff report says that the housing element will come back for adoption, possible adoption at the end of January. So between now and then.
Okay.
How about a Saturday in the first half of January?
I guess that's more a question for staff
Mhm.
because it is a Saturday and there's considerations about scheduling and overtime and other things that go along with the Saturday meeting. But
So, a town hall meeting, can you tell us what the actual, is that, I guess that would be if more than a quorum is there or a quorum is there, from the council, that would be a designated council meeting, would it not?
Yes. What agenda is it?
yeah, it's usually a good idea to agendize a town hall. Usually they're conducted by staff, in which, the particular staff experts are there to answer questions. It's more of a Q&A than a council meeting. Council members can attend a town hall. They just can't discuss or deliberate at the town hall.
But
So,
they could ask, a council member can ask questions.
of course.
Yes? Okay. I'm just wondering how burdensome it is for staff to conduct that meeting if you're not needing to take minutes. It's not actually a meeting, right? So we don't have to do minutes and all that.
It's
that
not,
correct?
it's not a council meeting, so no.
And I would assume essentially Gary will just give the exact same presentation. This is his third time giving, third time.
Uh, Based on, what the city attorney said, I mean, it sounds like we could structure it more as a Q&A,
Hmm.
as opposed to me giving a similar presentation, which as much as I love doing these, it is
We've done it a lot.
really good at. So yeah, if the council has recommendations for what they want covered, the things we should be prepared to answer, let us know. But we're open to doing whatever, you think would be helpful as part of this process.
Okay. We have some.
Is there another venue that we could use instead of to accommodate more seating and a little more comfortable seating?
I don't see why not.
Well, there's the Grange,
Crash Hall.
Yeah.
I kind of envision sort of a round table where there's a good amount of back and forth and question and answer, and I don't know, we could even make it a potluck for that matter.
I'd kind of like the council to decide. Do you guys want a Q&A session, or do we need another presentation for the public? What are we feeling we want to have done at this meeting? I want it to be productive.
Right.
So what is everybody thinking? I kind of
I
want to get a vibe from you guys on that.
I would love to have a short period of time to prepare questions and receive information from the public on what specifically their concerns are and bring them to make this more of a what are the issues and can the expert actually address what we're talking about or learning about.
So would someone like to formulate a description for staff on exactly what it is we're asking for, a date and a time, and what we're going to be doing for the public?
And would there be a way that maybe the public would be able to present their questions beforehand
Mhm.
so that, our experts and staff would be able to have some time rather than just getting bombarded in a meeting? We still want it to be organic, but at the same time, having an opportunity for the people in the town to, without any barriers, say, here's my concern, or what would happen if, and just have a nice open back and forth. Would that be helpful to staff and to the presenters on this to have some, if possible, questions presented in advance as well as in the meeting?
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful. And then, as you know, things are going to happen organically at a meeting like that. Our response will lead to additional questions. So it'll probably be a combination of the two. But yeah, it would be helpful to receive things in advance.
Okay.
Some members of the public, Lisa Hoover, for example, has already done so. So we have some subject matter we can cover. But yeah.
Time and a date. Does the council have a time and a date that they would like to do that? Let's go ahead and figure that out.
It looks like the 11th or the 18th are possibilities. I suppose the 25th as well. Those look like the most viable, staying away from the holiday.
Staff wish to comment on any of those dates.
Are you looking particularly at Saturdays on those 2 days?
I'm looking at Saturday.
Can we just a quick poll of the public we do have here is a Saturday?
About Saturday. I remember meet the candidates night, it's a full house range.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising. I think evening or afternoon maybe, but Saturday I would check also with Range.
Mhm.
They might have a little.
Mhm.
I could check that calendar right now.
Actually, the Grange is actually kind of
You got it?
blocking off a good amount of January for a remodel, but that only affects the big room. We could use the little room. There's room for 20 or 30 people in there. The Crash Hall.
Do we need
Crash Hall's booked. We're like booked out for parties.
Well,
Busy time.
Yeah.
sounds like
they,
we
they
probably
start at 9.
You've got a big house.
Oh, you're funny.
Can we plan this in the future? Can we not take this
Well,
on right
I
now,
think
or do we need
part of
direct
what
action?
we're up against is we're really trying to get to a point where you can consider adoption. We've been working on this, like Gary said, for 3 years. We've had town halls, we've had this presentation. This is his third or fourth time presenting the same information. The information itself isn't going to change. The questions that we received really haven't changed. Um, and I'm not sure what a town hall necessarily will provide. I mean, if people have additional questions, Gary's been open to receiving those. He has office hours the second and fourth Wednesday that he's always available to talk with people. So I'm not sure, but like I said, we really need to get to a point where we're going for adoption. Not being in compliance with the state is a really precarious position to be in. And I know Mr. Ponte had raised a question about compliance and how important it was. It's critically important, and cities are being sued. Elk Grove was just sued by the state over I think it was a 60-unit apartment complex, which is a very small project in the state of California. And the state came after them, and they said, it doesn't matter your size or your scope. People need to be in compliance, and we have taken state resources and dollars to get to this point as well. So we're happy to continue to answer questions, but at some point we're not really receiving new questions. And so, if we can figure out a method to kind of move this forward, would be really appreciated.
Well,
Whatever the council. Sorry, go ahead.
may I, respond? Yeah, I do appreciate that there's a sense of, there's a time limit of a sense with this. And you've been enduring for some time and wanting to get this signed off and move on. It's got to be rather uncomfortable wondering if the shoe is going to drop, so to speak, with the state. And I certainly don't want to prolong that. I think with a newly seated council and asking for another opportunity to really have a porous meeting with the public and say, please come out, let us know your concerns. In the meantime, those few extra weeks will allow the council to really get saturated with the information, very familiar with it, and most importantly, be able to understand for ourselves and express to the residents what it does and doesn't impact us
Mhm.
with. Gary, you do an excellent job with that. And I feel like that's part of our role as a council is to help educate and support. So I feel like the more that we know and understand, and then we can hear from them, we can also help explain the ideas as we understand them as well. So I feel like having a town hall in early January could help facilitate us moving forward rather than lingering around. I would love to have that opportunity.
I would as well.
Those other two venues are local.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts about the date? Should we just call it the 11th? The 18th is the Saturday before Martin Luther King Day. Perhaps the 11th is a little easier from a holiday perspective.
Fine with me, I don't know.
Fine by me.
Let's call it the 11th then.
Anybody? I want to make sure we're all.
Are you available, Gary?
Pick whatever y'all want. We'll do it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's a long day for me. I do get up at 5 a.m. on Saturdays, but more than
Well, you're not required to attend either, I think, right? It's open, it'll be open to everybody,
it's a long day.
but you wouldn't be
Don't forget
required.
Q&As, but, yeah.
The 11th or the 18th works.
The 11th or the 18th?
I
Anybody
would,
have-
I'm available. I would defer to the city manager then to select between those two dates.
We can, we'll check availability of facilities. We can shoot for the 11th. So that gives us any additional time, Gary, if there's anything that needs to be clarified through the process. If that works for everyone, we'll shoot for the 11th.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know you're adding a lot on the table there.
Before we move on, we just need to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Any more questions from the public? Otherwise, we'll go ahead, Gary.
Just as far as the recommendation is to continue, once you close it, is continue the public hearing to January.
Okay.
Right.
Julie, go ahead before we close the public comment.
Yes, I appreciate this. I have some recommendations for facilities. Perhaps we could reach out to the school for the gym, the cafeteria. A lot that is in our housing element is going to, in a way, affect the Rancheria with some other things. So perhaps the Sapphire Palace, having a representative from the Rancheria being invited to look at our housing element is too, I think would be good PR. So just some thoughts of other venues and keeping the rest of our community involved so we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're gonna go ahead.
Did we get a particular time of day for that, or we're just letting that float at the moment?
I'll check and see what the availability is, and then
Sounds good.
I can kind of pull everyone to see.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you, man. Thank you, man. We'll go ahead and close public comment on this until the future Q&A meeting, in which will be determined in the future. Excuse me.
Oh.
The date was the 11th, correct?
We're not doing the public hearing on the 11th. It'll be continued to the January council meeting.
Apologies. Thank you.
Do we need a motion for that?
We have a motion?
To continue the public hearing to our January 28th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Hearing the second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item 12, we have the Humboldt County Association of Governments, HCOG, conducts an yearly outreach to identify and quantify unmet transit needs in our community and the region. HCOG staff made a presentation to the City Council on November 26, 2024, regarding the unmet transit needs process, including providing information on how residents can participate in the process. As part of this presentation, a public hearing was held to gather community input. A second hearing was scheduled for December 10th, 2024 to allow for additional outreach and participation in the public. The public can provide comments via the public hearing by presenting written comments or by participating in the available electronic survey managed by HCOG. And is HCOG, is the representative here?
No, we don't have a representative. Oh, we do?
She is here.
Oh. Hey,
Great.
great. Thanks for stopping in.
Yeah.
Great. Do you want to go ahead and introduce us then?
Yeah, hi, I'm Michelle Nielsen. I am the contract planner for HCOG. At the pleasure of the council, I could give basically the same presentation I gave November 26th. I did shorten it a little bit. Or if it would be the preference of the council, they could take public comment. So I'm prepared for either way. It is a short, fairly brief presentation. So,
what is the pleasure of the council? It sounds like we're going to go ahead and do the presentation.
All right. Let me get her queued up here. And
I just want to make sure everyone's in agreement on
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going with that. Okay. All righty. So, all the slides that are in the slide deck, I cut out a couple. They have been made available to the city and this to share with the council and the public. Tonight, what we're looking for the council to do is to open the public hearing following my presentation to allow residents to comment on transit needs in Humboldt, and then to close the public hearing and direct staff to forward a summary of those comments to HCOG. And all input that we hear this evening is valuable. And even if it may not be an unmet transit need, it can still be used as documentation to support grant applications for improving transit service in the county, including capital improvements. And the public comment period for this cycle is they're accepted until the end of the year, December 31st. And the online survey will be open for that same period. So an overview of the process, it is the public input process that we're doing this evening and done through other communities throughout Humboldt County as part of the Transportation Development Act, which provides funding for transit. Unmet transit need is a public transportation need that's not being currently met by the transportation system. This process evaluates the adequacy of the existing services. And locally, the process involves, like tonight's public hearing, releasing the survey, and receiving comments, email, phone, through the office. And then, well, what's an unmet transit need? At a minimum, it's requested trips from residents who don't have access to public or specialized transportation, or private transportation services. It could also be trips for residents who don't have the means to travel for medical appointments, shopping, social services, education, training, that sort of thing. It could also be transportation that is part of and identified in a regional transportation plan, and that there's broad-based support, which means persons who will most likely use the service on a regular basis have demonstrated support. What an unmet transit need isn't is transit improvements that are funded or scheduled for implementation in the next fiscal year. Minor operational improvements or changes such as bus stops, schedules, minor route changes. It doesn't include primary or secondary school transportation, and it doesn't include sidewalk improvements or street and road needs. And then, so that's the first test. Is there an unmet transit need? And then it's those needs that we hear, is it reasonable to meet? I need to move my little picture here thing because it's kind of getting my way. So reasonable to meet criteria, and these are definitions that originate out of state law. There is some allowance for local tailoring to meet local conditions, but ultimately the definition of unmet transit need and reasonable to meet have to be consistent with state law. So reasonable to meet, the roadways are of that need are they're adequate, they're safe to operate. There's funding from identified sources to cover the service's marginal operating costs for at least 3 years. The service must be projected to meet minimum marginal fare box return ratio of 10% within 2 years upon launch. Again, can't compare unmet transit needs with the needs for streets and roads. And then the performance of the service is bound to be reasonable to meet. And once it's implemented, if it's regularly marketed and promoted, that it meets some metrics that are written into the into HCOG's rules that were adopted by the board the first few years of service. There's regular evaluation of it to see if it's meeting those metrics. There is an expectation that when a new service is launched, that it's not going to be immediately flooded with customers and riders, but that there's still some metrics to be met to be reasonable to meet. And this just briefly, just an overview of the process. So obviously we're kind of in that first box heading towards the end of the year. This will be followed by HCOG staff compiling all the public input we received from these hearings, folks who've emailed and called the office. Those will be compiled and provided to the transit providers for input as well. And then a report will be prepared, and that report will be taken to the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council. That is part of HCOG. They advise the HCOG board, and they will provide recommendations on this report on unmet transit needs. And there'll be, again, more opportunity for public review of the draft report, and then ultimately looking about May of next year for adoption of the report. And then there are known transit needs, more frequent service, earlier and later service during the weekdays, Sunday service on RTS, and later service on Friday and Saturday between Eureka and Arcade. These are things that we've heard many, many times. And so these are definitely known and noted. And there's actually some of these, there's service changes coming to address some of these. So just briefly, some just graphs of riderships over time. So the blue bar on the far left shows HTA ridership on 2019, 2020 fiscal year, and then moving over the most recent fiscal years on the far right. So generally, you're looking at trend of that ridership has been increasing since the pandemic, but ridership still is not, for a lot of the services, is still making up room to where it was prior to the pandemic. And again, for some of the smaller routes, the one on the left here is Southern Humboldt, followed by Willow Creek, and then Dial-A-Ride. Dial-A-Ride, this last fiscal year did show a decline in ridership, not very small, but there was a decline. And Willow Creek did actually show an increase in ridership beyond where they were previously at before the pandemic. As far as we heard a question, where did all the riders go? In talking with HTA, the numbers indicate that there's been a big drop in ridership from students. There's still a lot of online learning opportunities, so they don't have a lot of, there's been a drop with students, but also there's been a drop due to more people being able to work at home. So those are what they've seen as drops in ridership. But overall, this last fiscal year, nearly 500,000 total passenger trips. So 480, 300. And then as far as Arcata, similar trends. The red line at the bottom shows Cal Poly enrollment, which has changed very little in this reporting period, but the ridership has definitely been increasing over time, like the other service lines. And then just briefly going over some of HTA's more recent accomplishments. Mostly, a lot of it relates to the recently awarded $18.7 million grant that they received earlier this year. I think it was about September or October. But they've been adding lower emission vehicles, including they're adding a hydrogen fueling station and hydrogen buses. They are working on the development of an intermodal transit center that would be based in Eureka. With the grant, in addition to the lower emission vehicles, improving the information for transit riders and increase the frequency of services. So getting some of these get at some of the unmet transit needs that have been heard before on that previous slide. Other things that have been implemented is unified branding and fares, tap to pay, the North State Express Route 101. That's the service that you can take from Eureka down to Ukiah for $2, and their ridership during the fiscal year from launch to the end of June was over 600 riders. They've also had a soft launch of a pilot program for microtransit called Flex Rider. It is in this Flex Rider microtransit project that is in the greater Humboldt Bay area. It doesn't reach Blue Lake at this time, but that makes use of spaces on the Dial-A-Ride van. So, but overall, making it easier for riders and potential riders to choose transit and to transfer between the different lines of the service providers. So if anybody this evening or maybe another night between now and the end of the year has any questions or they just want to provide input, they can email the HCOG office. They can give us a call. They can leave a voicemail if they can't catch somebody. And then also we have our online survey. It's available in both English and Spanish, and will be open until the end of the year. And again, all input is valuable because it can be used for documenting transit needs and that may not be an unmet transit need, but where could be in transit improvements for grant applications. So there's different grants that the HCOG and its transit partners go after. So that's the extent of my presentation, and I'm going to stop sharing. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. That's
Thank you very much. Does the council have any questions?
I do have one question. Did we, forgive me if I'm not familiar with this, but it seems like we did do a survey of locally of transit. Did that have anything to do with this survey? Transit needs?
Sorry. So we did do a transit survey. Actually, Sandy Bennett's here. She did a very targeted transit survey when we lost our transit service. And that was really helpful to look at the needs of Blue Lake specific. And so that information has been given to HTA and HCOG to help kind of formulate ideas and needs for our community. So this. Great.
Great. Oh, yes. Yes, that'd be fine. Is that yeah, great.
Work right on. So, the Blue Lake Community Resource Center and I did some collaboration.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Same.
I got one. And so the unmet transit needs survey that is being conducted right now is a yearly survey that HCOG puts out for a larger scope. So each year we go out and we do public hearings. We make available different survey opportunities for people, but it's really to gather more specific information for each locality. So looking to see what are kind of the needs of our ridership in Blue Lake specific.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council before we take it to the public? Open it up for
A quick question for Sandy. Where did you say the results are of the survey?
Oh, next page.
Oh, my bad. Turn the page.
Beautiful. Life threw me off. All right.
Thank you.
We were able to give that to Mr. Pratt at a meeting that we had.
And so maybe you could clarify a little bit more how HCOG may or may not be using these survey results to look at Blue Lake's transit needs.
So those survey results, I understand, were passed along to HTA, and HTA. Those are not. I have not had access to those, and it's my understanding that HTA added from their Willow Creek route, added a stop eastbound and westbound. I think I think it's one or two. I don't know the count. Due to the change, I think it was the Rancheria have previously provided, and that there was that discontinued, and so HTA used they added the service in Blue Lake. I can't speak to the role of the survey results into that, making those adjustments. I'm perhaps the city manager might have a little bit. I think she may have a little more familiarity.
Sure. So those survey results have been being used to look at microtransit, to look at dial-a-ride, to look at more specific needs in Blue Lake itself. So we've been working closely with HTA. They've been applying for funding and programs and opportunities through their funding sources. They do work closely with HCOG on transit needs. HCOG is a source of funneling funding down to the different programs as well. So I know Greg and his crew have been using those results to really advocate for Blue Lake resources.
Great, thank you. Any further questions from council? we'll go ahead and open up to the public for input. Anyone from the public want to give input? We do have Julie, sorry. Julie, go ahead from Zoom.
Yes, thank you, I believe Sandy from HCOG, Humboldt County Association of Governments, and then our Humboldt Transit Authority for HTA, just for others. I do follow up with HCOG, kind of familiar seeing the presentation. My concerns here locally would be our high school students. I know one of the main reasons, main ridership out in Willow Creek is for high school students. Being a parent that had a graduate last year at McKinleyville High, we're allowed bus services from the Northern Humboldt School District in the AM, but PM runs are non-existent for McKinleyville High students out here in Blue Lake. So that's just something in my thoughts and concerns. Perhaps we could maybe get something en route with that to kind of focus on our kids, because already the majority ridership, as far as I'm aware, for the Willow Creek route is the high school kids. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sandy Bennett. I live at 630 Blue Lake Boulevard. I just think it's really important for us to have a bus. I think it's important for us to have service here for the people that can't. I went 9 months without a car, and it was just really, really stressful. And I think it's more than just me that thinks that we need a bus here. It's just I always appreciated riding the casino bus and appreciate everything they did for the community with that. But I think it's time for us to take this on ourselves somehow, make a bus something happen. I don't know what that takes or anything, but I just think it's important for us to have some kind of service here. It's hard to get out of here. The nearest store is Murphy's, and look how far that is. Thank you.
May I ask you a question,
Of
Sandy?
course.
Do you have any particular times of the day or days of the week that you think would be helpful or most helpful?
Well, I think it would be important to be able to get out to daytime appointments in the morning and in the afternoon. Maybe, I don't know, a couple runs in the morning, a couple runs in the afternoon, so that people can um, um, get to a doctor, to the store. I rode a bus one time um, to Arcata, and I wasn't familiar with it. I had exactly 15 minutes. And at that time, I had to run and knock on the bus for them to let me inside, because I was going to miss the bus, because all I did was walk around the block a couple of times. It was very scary, because then the next bus wasn't till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something. So I would have had to sat at the train station from morning until afternoon. I don't think that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
So I'm Dana Silvernail. I live on 3rd Avenue, 730 and a half 3rd Avenue. And I remember when we had a meeting when we discussed transportation needs. And one of the things that came up is that the people that are homeless depend on getting to meals in Arcata. And so there's like so many needs. I think that we need to have frequent transportation to meet those needs.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing no more, I think we can go ahead and close the discussion. Do we need to take any action on this, or just?
No, this is just a public hearing to get
Great.
comment.
So we need to make a motion to close the public hearing?
All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 13. And the exclusive rights to negotiate with PT Blue Lake Redevelopment LLC Power Transitions. Power Transition is proposing to purchase or lease approximately 6 acres of city-owned land located on the assessor parcel number 025 161 003 and 312 161 016 for the development of a battery energy storage system, commonly referred to as BESS. In order to continue negotiations and conduct research and investigation regarding the appropriateness of the proposed development, city staff is recommending entering into an exclusive right to negotiate agreement, an ERN, with Power Transitions. The ERN will allow the city to conduct further analysis of the proposed project, including conducting additional community scoping meetings, technology research, and analysis of preliminary appraisal activities. The ERN does not bind the city to a sale or lease, but does require that we conduct our negotiations in good faith and exclusively with Power Transitions for the period of the time identified in the ERN. The intent of the ERN is to evaluate the proposal and to develop a recommendation on the development of an option agreement. Below is a summary of the exclusive right negotiation agreement. Should I go ahead and read all this?
You don't have to.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Second.
We'll go ahead and what's our next step here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I could just give a brief report. So this came before prior council at the prior meeting. It was originally discussed as continuing it to January. However, we did bring it back in December to allow the council another chance to consider revised ERN and to allow, if the council approves, Power Transitions to have in place the exclusive right to negotiate agreement when RCEA opens its competitive solicitation for power purchase. And so it's back before the council. There are some changes to the agreement that was last presented. One of the bigger changes is we removed a lot of the complexity from the agreement. In the prior agreement, there was a document called Annex C that spelled out a lot of conceptual terms that would or could be included in an option agreement. And a lot of those assumed a sale of the property. And we heard the council at the last meeting open to the idea of a lease. And so we wanted to remove the complexity of that so that it's clear that what we're negotiating is either an option or a lease or nothing based on how those negotiations unfold. And so the document in its most simple form is just an agreement to negotiate towards reaching an option agreement, whether it be a lease or a sale, in good faith for a period of time. The other big change is that period of time. In the original agreement, it was 3 months with 2 additional option months for a total of 5 potential months. In talking with the folks at Power Transitions, we think it's better to extend that period of time. And so in your agreement is an 8-month period with 2 additional months for a potential of 10 months. And what that allows is more time to negotiate, more time to engage with the public, more time to consider the transaction. It allows Power Transitions more time to know if it's going to get an offtake agreement with RCEA before we spend a lot of time and effort negotiating an option agreement. It's also going to allow Power Transitions additional time to work with California ISO to get the interconnect agreement, or to at least understand if the interconnection agreement can be facilitated through the fast track process as opposed to the queue, which is a 6 to 7 year process. And obviously, a delay of 6 years changes the economics a lot for Power Transitions and also the city, both in terms of the ultimate deal, the timing of the demolition, who's going to pay for the demolition. And so we thought by expanding the period of time under the exclusive negotiating agreement, we're not negotiating in a very tight time frame. But we also don't want to tie up the property for 8 months if we know that this deal isn't going to go through. So what we've agreed to is essentially an exit ramp during that 8-month period if and this is in section 3.3 on page 3 of the draft document. But what it says is that if Power Transitions is not selected by RCEA as a finalist for an offtake agreement, by or if it's selected as a finalist, does not execute an offtake agreement by the end of July 2025, either party can terminate the agreement. If they don't get an offtake agreement, the bottom line is this project isn't going to go through. So there's no need to further negotiate. And so it's an 8-month term, 2 additional option periods, 2 additional option months for a total of 10. Power Transitions will pay the city $15,000 for the 8-month period, and if they want to invoke option periods, it's $2,500 per month. And so that $15,000 will help offset the city's due diligence costs, legal fees, other things to get an agreement negotiated. But again, the reason it came back in December as opposed to January is Power Transitions is in a better position to respond to RCEA's competitive solicitation with the exclusive negotiating agreement in place, as opposed to it not being in place. So staff's recommendation would be to authorize the city manager to go ahead and execute the agreement. And then we come back, we begin discussions with Power Transitions, but I think the city manager wanted to come back to the council at a later date and form a negotiating ad hoc committee that at the council's discretion could include up to 2 members of the council and also some designated members of the community if you felt that was helpful to provide some additional perspective on the negotiating team. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Jeff is here again if you have any questions about the details.
Great.
Do you know the dates of the solicitation with RCEA?
It's going to be issued in January. I believe it's early January is when the solicitation will go out, and it's a short time frame to respond.
How short? Is it 3 months?
Oh, no, it's within a month. Excuse me. Any other questions?
So are we negotiating? Are we soliciting? What do we do?
So I can just respond. The agreement is to negotiate with Power Transitions to try to reach an agreement that would give them rights to the property.
Is this all written out somewhere? Should we put this thing?
In the packet is the actual agreement to negotiate in the public packet.
Where do you get the public?
It's online.
Does the council have any questions?
I'd happen to go left to right this time. No.
No.
Go ahead.
They're still formulating right now.
Mm.
So, simplify it for me. The timeline for RCA, the timeline for Power Transitions, and then the timeline for the contract.
Sure.
And important deadlines. Thank you.
I'll start with the contract. The contract requires the city to spend up to 8 months negotiating with Power Transitions to try to reach a deal.
Right. With 2 additional.
With potential for 2 additional months if
Okay.
Power Transitions so elects.
Okay.
And that would start as soon as the agreement is executed by the city and Power Transition. Separate and apart from that is RCEA, Redwood Coast Energy Authority, is issuing a countywide solicitation for power generation, power storage, battery storage. And Power Transitions wishes to participate in that competitive solicitation to eventually, hopefully, get an agreement with RCEA under which RCEA would purchase power from Power Transitions for this project. And so they're separate processes, but the RCEA, the success of the RCEA process is necessary for the success of our battery storage. If they don't have anybody to sell power to, then there's no economic benefit. And so the 8-month period is to allow that process to complete so that we know all things are go for negotiations. They've crossed off that box. They have somebody to sell their power to, and we have enough time left in the negotiating period to try to reach a deal.
I think more specifically with RCEA,
Mhm.
what is their timeline for when they open and when they close solicitations?
That's not out yet, but all indications are is that they're going to release the RFP in January. It was supposed to be released in November. They pushed it back to January, and I don't anticipate that they'll push it back further.
Then, do we have any history on this that we might know how long that period would be for the RFP?
Once they issue it, there'll usually be a response deadline within 30 days. They'll select finalists. They'll begin negotiations with those finalists, and they will select one or more to execute a power offtake agreement with.
A question for either you and or the city manager. I know you guys have a lot of time invested in this. Um, what do you imagine might be our competitors as far as any offtake or a competitor that might nudge us out on a project?
Hard to say. It is a countywide solicitation. The problem is there's a limited amount of properties available that can facilitate battery storage. You need the interconnect, you need the transformer, you need power coming in at a high level, you need space. Really, I mean, Jeff can speak to this better, but the old power plants are perfectly situated for this type of redevelopment, and it's really us and the Fairhaven plant on Samoa that has similar capabilities. RCEA has attempted to put battery storage on Samoa, and um, they were pretty much shut out by California ISO. And so it'll be interesting, and Jeff, maybe you can speak to this too. It'll be interesting to see who responds to the competitive solicitation.
Right. And Mandy, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I know Richard Engel came and gave us a couple presentations recently just to kind of give a better understanding of the process, kind of the future of energy for RCEA, kind of their portfolio. So, ultimately, these are kind of collective projects that are, that have positive benefits for not only the city or the entity, but also RCEA. We're also members of RCEA, so it's kind of a partnership in that respect as well, where we're trying to help facilitate what RCEA's, kind of green energy goals are, which are also our green energy goals and our region's energy goals. So, in that way, even though it's a competitive solicitation, it's also somewhat of a partnership as we're all trying to work together to find some ways to, transition some of these old polluting, facilities over to something that's more palatable for our community, but also has that cross benefit.
So suffice it to say, we don't have 15 other locations that might come in and be choices. So that's
Yeah,
good.
my
Thank you.
understanding is it's really Fairhaven, which I think is a little bit, I'm not sure where they are at in the process, if there's any interest. But we are kind of marching along on a tight timeline, because of the fact that the plant has been down for so long. And now power transition has to get into the queue with CAISO to try and get that offtake and get those systems back in place and permitted and regulated. So the longer it sits idle without any activity associated with it, the longer that process could take. And it's my understanding that process can go maybe a fast track process, which is kind of a hopeful, but a longer process could be 2, 7, 10 years. So there is some long-term impacts for, not kind of moving forward in kind of a dedicated path.
Okay, thank you.
Some answer to that too.
Can you?
Kid man, I just recall Richard saying that at the planning commission meeting where he spoke that RCA actually has a fairly, just to speak to the competitive thing, that the RCA has a fairly big appetite for battery energy storage. So it's unlikely that someone would bump us out. But it does have to be open. This agreement does have to be open in order for these guys to even respond.
Yeah.
Does the council have any more questions?
I inquired at our CEA about the length of the RFP. Um, and my understanding was that it would be 3 months, that it would be open for about 3 months. So, so
Yeah, I think it was explained, they are gonna be sending out the RFP. It was November, it moved to December, and now it's gonna be early January. They're pushing their board to give approval for its release, as soon as possible. They think it's gonna be in December, so it would be an early January release. And then it would be 30 days for us to reply. And then it would be another 30 days to have discussion, and then open discussion, and then selection, and then contract negotiations. So that's roughly a 3-month process.
okay. And my understanding as well was that it was not going to be tied to the location, um, so that you wouldn't need to have site control or be in a contract in order to apply for the solicitation.
Part of we have a meeting actually with RCEA tomorrow to talk about this and ahead of the release of the RFP. But we understand that a part of their scoring process is a siting that has certain characteristics that could support a battery energy storage facility. And those characteristics would be land, transmission, and interconnection into a Blue Lake substation, as an example. Substation. So that is going to be part of their scoring process. If somebody has a greenfield project, a project where uh, interconnection at all, then they're going to be scored much lower than what we would be scored,
Okay.
as we understand it.
Right. And then my other understanding about the RFP is that RCEA has battery storage contracts all over the state. We have solar generation contracts in other locations. So and I guess this RFP is looking for a local battery storage. However, if you weren't selected by RCEA and you did go forward with the project, you would need or the option to sell your power to anybody in the state, correct?
It's a good question. We would have the opportunity to sell power to PG&E, as an example, right? RCEA has a higher purpose than PG&E. I think we're all aware of that. And I believe that that if we ended up with PG&E, it would take much longer, and the economic viability of the project would be greatly diminished.
Okay.
And so, and as mentioned earlier by Mandy, is we're worried about California ISO, and actually because the plant has been down for over 3 years, and our plan, and I think we discussed it at our last meeting, our plan is to have a arrangement with the city, arrangement with RCEA. Doesn't have to be a final arrangement, but at least an understanding, an arrangement with RCEA, and have a good understanding in terms of the transmission corridor that would be available to us, meaning how many megawatts can get across the lines, and then go back to California ISO and say, we have it all. Okay. We have everything to prove that this is a good project in a great community for a great community, for a great power source, meaning battery. That's our plan. If ISO says we're looking at other alternatives, maybe more clever alternatives to get the transmission through the wires. But it would be a tough nut. It would be hard. I think that was what was said. Yeah, and I do want to make a point, and the notion of partnership is really important. I envision this as a partnership with us and the city, and us with our CEA and the city. It's sort of a triumvirate. Without the three working together, we will never be able to convince California ISO that this is a project that they should approve to go forward.
Short term, I mean, with the short track or long Or the long track, you mean?
The long track is much more challenging because it will take 7 to 10 years, and the economic viability and the technologies, although they're improving, the technologies, if there is an impact on China because of the politics of our country right now, then the cost of the equipment could go significantly higher, and that could kill the project. Right now, even Tesla, and I'm being candid, even Tesla buys a lot of its components from sourced from China. And so if we don't accelerate this project's approval and implementation, then it might not be cost effective to even proceed with the project.
I see.
It's really a timing issue now. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We
Yeah.
appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Mayor.
No,
I,
thank you for asking questions. We'll open up to a public in just a moment. Just want to make sure there's no other questions from council, and then we'll take it to the public. Seeing none, we'll open this up to the public. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Lori Ponte. So I was at the meeting that we had in November when the council voted to move this item to January. So it sounds like things have changed, and so there's so much information, right? I mean, and I feel like it's still too soon for this council to move any sooner than a January meeting with, even though, there's this concern of time. It's interesting because at the last meeting, there was discussion of where the energy or where the energy is purchased to start this process with battery storage, and the answer I believe was PG&E. So we're looking at using PG&E, which isn't green, to power these batteries, so that it's kind of a little sounds like. And there's also the issue of other than these council meetings, and for people who are on Zoom, and there are far more people on Zoom at this meeting than there have ever been. And people here who haven't been here before but are concerned about the particular item on the agenda. I believe that with a change in our council and the impression that we were given when we were looking at voting for new council members of uh, clarity and community and getting information, that this particular idea, this particular issue is something that should go to the community at large. And we've talked about having town hall meetings when we looked at the Danco project, when we've been given information about Storyland. I think this is bigger, possibly, than those two other issues, because this would affect so many parts of Blue Lake. So I would like to ask this new council to consider, even though there is a time crunch, to compete against possibly no one in the area for this this project, to consider having a town hall meeting before going any further with negotiations. Thank you.
Any other questions from the team? Go ahead.
I'm Dana Silvernail again. And I don't know anything about except that what batteries, that's the only thing I know about it. So I'm completely ignorant about it. But the question that comes up to me is what's the environmental impact, and what are what kind of research has been done, and I think that's critical. So I just want that to be considered too.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Terry Bayless, and welcome to our new city council. It sounds like there's a number of questions that even, one of our council members has about this project. And I know as a resident of Blue Lake, my fault for maybe not being as involved, but it seems like if it's a big issue, it should be more public than this has been so that we understand what's going on in our community. And I do have some really deep reservations about the health and safety of this project for the community. And how equipped our fire department is to handle any issues that might come up. I think there's some really big questions that need to be answered on this. And I would encourage the city council, if you haven't been a big part of this, maybe to slow that process down a little bit and to ask more questions and see how your community feels about this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, go ahead. I'll get you next, Kit.
I'm with Dr. Collins. I live at 521 First Avenue. This is a public health and safety issue. And this council really needs to look at what this project is really about, who is really behind it, and what the issues are with these battery storage systems. It has no revenue stream for our community. And just to store power out there in a flood zone, to me, is crazy. Quite frankly, I think you really need to take a look at what this means to our community. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and go to Zoom. We have Julie. Go ahead, Julie.
Yes, thank you guys. You're being troopers. I do understand the importance of the ERN. It actually is going to allow for a lot of these questions to be answered. And however, after reviewing the one that's in the packet now prior to the last one, I do see in the recitals, item B, that Land Gas and the City of Blue Lake are currently in a dispute regarding Blue Lake facility. And they're quoting it as the Blue Lake facility dispute. Farther down on recitals on item G, it says Power Transitions is also in discussion with Land Gas regarding an acquisition of the Blue Lake facility assets, which are subject to the Blue Lake facility dispute. Another item, which was 3.3 under termination, it does go into Power Transitions and their selection with RCA and the guidelines there for January and July 31st. I do see also that they'll be carrying a sustainable amount of insurance while during these negotiation times. Also supplementing the city with an immediate within 3 days deposit. So I think there are a few things that I personally have questions about. One thing also was originally we discussed this being a 6-acre purchase, and I see within the agreement now it's 25, maybe a little clarification there. But there are a lot of questions. However, I do understand that we need the NDA to get those questions answered. But I think in the meantime, before we go forward, we need to listen to the prior council. Their recommendation, if we had minutes from November, was to put this off till January. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Kit would go. Go ahead.
I
No,
don't
it's fine.
see you. I
It's fine.
can't see you past the phone.
No, it's fine.
Kit man, I think that, calls for more information, calls for more information. That's exactly what this does. Is it opens the window so that we can get all the information and answer all the questions. There's a lot of misinformation on Facebook out there right now about this, about the whole thing. I've seen just really ridiculous things. Some people thought, I've had 2 people tell me that they thought we were just going to be storing used batteries, like out of your phone and stuff, piled up out there. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. The thing that the agreement does is it makes room for us to really dig deeply into every question that we have. We want to answer every concern that the community has. But both Power Transitions and the city need to have a container to do that in. And this provides that container so that we can answer all these questions and have the town hall meeting. We can actually have a town hall meeting if we go ahead and open this. Rebecca put it a great way. We can stand outside and look in the window all we want, but if we want to know what's inside, we got to go inside. So this is going inside. This is the vehicle with which we can vet the whole thing at a much deeper level. We'll be getting information that they can't talk about now because they don't have any container to put it in. They don't have a, we don't have an exclusivity. We can ask bigger questions. We can get more information. I think it's really critical that we go ahead and open this thing so that we really can get to that deeper level of information. Thanks.
Thank you. Nona, go ahead.
I guess maybe Kit answered my question, but I was just gonna say, could we do a town hall potentially even on the same day? And why do we have to be in agreement to have a town hall meeting? Especially even if it is just some of the surface level questions to get the community more comfortable with it at large before agreeing to anything. And would it be appropriate to possibly do it on the same day as the housing element town hall, like an hour and a half for each or an hour for each? I think a lot of the same people would be invested in both projects, and then it's not taking up 2 Saturdays. So maybe, I don't know if that's an option. But.
Thank you. Did we have any more questions on Zoom? I saw somebody up there, but it disappeared. Okay, seeing none. Anyone else in the public before we bring it back to council for discussion and possible resolution?
I have a question about the exclusivity issue. I realize that means that we're not negotiating with anybody but Power Transitions during that time. But how does that affect our ability to talk to anyone or everyone in our effort to research different aspects of the project?
That wouldn't affect our ability to conduct due diligence. It wouldn't affect our ability to continue planning for other alternatives on the site. We just can't negotiate with others to site the same or to use that 6 acres while we're under an exclusive negotiating agreement with Power Transitions. And just keep in mind, I mean, the agreement may end in January, right? If Power Transitions is not selected as a finalist through RCEA's process, this agreement terminates. If they don't get an offtake agreement, this agreement terminates. This agreement does not bind the city to accept the project, to move forward with the project. We have to negotiate a project first. Then we have to go through regulatory entitlement process, assuming the council wants to move forward with it. And then there's a 2-year option period in which the full regulatory process will be undertaken. This is simply an agreement to facilitate the exchange of information and to see if there's a mutual desire on each side to move forward with an option agreement.
And just to confirm, we've extended the length of time we have so that we can get more public input. Is that correct?
Yeah, and one thing we added in here is a commitment by Power Transitions to engage in public engagement. And so during the negotiation agreement, Power Transitions agrees to perform public engagement efforts, including that's 5.1.
Thank you.
On page 3, including town halls, information materials as reasonably requested by the city. And so there will be plenty of opportunities to facilitate town halls, both sponsored by the city, sponsored by Power Transitions. It's something that during this 8-month period is important. And so that will facilitate that as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none. What's our next course of action? Go ahead and consider.
Yeah, entertain a motion to, approve or authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
I think that I'd like some comments first before we just go to a vote.
Great. No, go continue.
If I may.
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely.
I'd like to recognize that the previous council took a chance, knowing that many of them would be outgoing. And it's been difficult for power transition. It's a nail biter for you, quite frankly, all the way. I hope that you would give us the grace and understanding that if we didn't sign on the dotted line today, it wouldn't be that anybody has an intention to scuttle this. I have faith that these council members here truly want to learn about this, be well informed, to delve into some peer-reviewed articles about the nature of these batteries, what it could mean if it is in a floodplain, if there was damage to the levee. There are a lot of questions that we have, but I think first and foremost, it's important that we understand the structure of the contract before we sign anything. I would hope that we could consider a closed session with the attorney. It could be relatively brief and relatively soon. Maybe even I would hope maybe this month. That individually we can take our time to review again these terms and then come forward to the attorney with some specific questions so that we're very clear on what we would be committing the city to at this time and then what our options would be as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we can do that. I suggest we try to get that closed session scheduled within the week, from tonight so that, we can still meet power transitions needs to be responsive to the RCEA solicitation. If we wait till January 28th council meeting to approve this, they may have a day or two left in the response period to respond. So I'm happy to do a closed session. We can't do it tonight, obviously. But we could schedule a special meeting on short notice and have that closed session discussion. I'm happy to participate in that. The one thing I would say is in closed session, we are limited to discuss price and terms of payment. That's a pretty broad term, but discussions about the overall desirability of the ERN is not something that would be appropriate for closed session. And the price in terms of payment for this ERN is fairly straightforward. Once the ERN is in place and we begin negotiations in earnest, there will be a lot of closed sessions where we're discussing price in terms of payment. But we can have a limited discussion in closed session prior to executing this. That would be fine. I think we can just do it in short order instead of significantly down the road.
Any other comments, council?
I would just say that I feel like I'm not ready to make this decision. Maybe, I mean, honestly, I'm just not sure what I need to do to get there. I understand what you're saying, I guess I still have a few questions about our options, but I couldn't really articulate that right now. So I'm not.
The only thing I'd say is we're putting ourselves and power transitions at a competitive disadvantage by pushing just the negotiating agreement down the line. I mean, there's going to be plenty of time to consider the full project under the ERN, but I mean, the city commonly signs exclusive negotiating agreements when it comes to real property transactions, whether it be sale or lease. And this is, a vehicle to begin exchanging information, and a commitment by both parties that they're going to negotiate in good faith. Again, nothing binds the city through this agreement. That will be done, potentially 8-10 months from now, if this council chooses to continue forward with negotiations, understanding the whole scope of the project and the environmental review process and the information we've received from power transitions, whether they've met their milestones, project feasible and we can begin the road towards demolishing that plant. But you know, if RCEA misses out on, or if Power Transitions misses out on the RCEA solicitation, the project ends there. And so, you know, staff would like to put Power Transitions in the most competitive, in the most beneficial position when it responds to the solicitation, so that we can pass this milestone, which makes the rest of the milestones achievable.
So
And so,
I think the genesis of this particular part of the conversation is requesting closed session with the attorney so that the council can better understand the terms of the contract or implications of the terms. It isn't to weigh out whether any council member wants to decide at that time whether we do it or not, but to make sure that each individual on this council has a clear understanding. I know for me, and this isn't about power transitions or not, or whether, you know, battery storage or not, I will not sign a contract if I am not comfortable that I fully understand the terms. That said, I think that it would be important to work expeditiously as a council to get there, at least to be able to give a yay or nay. And so, no, I wouldn't intend to wait for a closed session sometime in January. I hear the sense of urgency and timing. I myself would, I'm pretty flexible with time, so I would be willing to meet sooner rather than later, and like within the next couple of weeks in December. And I think that could, you know, hang in there a little while longer because we want to give you a good, clear answer. And as we move forward, better understanding these terms of the contract, not full implications down the line, but terms of this contract, you know, we as a council can reach out to the public as well in a town comment.
There's only very limited scopes for to meet in closed session with your attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And like Ryan said, it's not for the applicability of that statute isn't to go over
Mm-hmm.
these types of details. These
Okay.
types of details need to be done in open session, or you can have time, you can talk with Ryan on your own, but it's
Sure.
not,
Okay.
you know, this has to be a transparent process. So
Great.
it's very limited what you can do in closed session. So just to make sure you have the understanding that if what is brought up in closed session isn't going to be an education necessarily on,
Mhm.
you know, going through the contracting. Those need to be done in open session.
Yeah.
With
Great.
he's
And
involved in
I'm glad that you pointed out that that option, that clarity. So that kind of, for me anyway, could speed things up more quickly because if it, you know, if I can have access with the attorney one-on-one, and if each council member could as well. Yeah. I mean, of course, I'm still just thinking about, hey, everybody get in there. Let's look at this. So sure, I think that could be for myself. Speaking for myself, I would like to be able to do that probably by next week. Read through, get my questions down. Meet.
and that would still necessitate the need for a special meeting to, I mean, unless there's a motion seconded and a successful vote tonight to go ahead and approve it tonight, there would still need to be a special meeting after you and I have a chance to sit down. And I'm happy to do that with any of you, you know, whether it's this or other things, because closed sessions are limited. So
I would like to suggest that we consider having a meeting next Tuesday.
Is that is that a motion or is that we need to do a motion to do that? Or,
I don't know.
what was that?
There would need to be a motion.
So we need to make a
Okay.
motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we have another council meeting next Tuesday.
On what? What are we doing? What would we discuss?
To discuss this further, to give all of us some days to do our homework and
Seems
come
to be
back.
a lot of punting of our responsibilities, it seems like here. I really don't, you know, I'm not really down on punting all of this. I think this is a great first step for improving this property and getting it done. We're not agreeing to anything. We're just negotiating agreement is needed. We're not committed to anything. We're going to get the fine details that you guys want. I say we just make that decision now. Let's get this ball rolling. You know, that's what I think.
So we
I think this is a big decision for some folks that are sitting at this table for the first time tonight. So I'm asking
I think
some
folks here are pretty
understanding.
savvy. I've seen people out here. Everyone's been reading the packets. This isn't just something that popped up today. That's just my personal feeling. I feel like we should move on this.
Do we need to take a break or a moment, reset? Okay.
Do you need a break? Okay.
No, Chris, I
Um,
don't.
Come on, guys. Let's kind of.
Um,
No,
Yeah,
everyone's
I-
good. Everyone's good. Everyone's good.
I'm not heated in any
We're all
way.
good. We're
Straightforward. I would like to move forward. That's what I'd like to see.
great.
Okay.
Let's discuss a little more. So does the motion die if it doesn't get a second? Then we're going to go ahead and discuss a little more. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and let's have a little more discussion. That motion has died. Let's discuss a little bit more, and see if we can figure out what we're going to do here. Any input, Michelle?
I'd like to make a motion to move forward.
We have a motion to
Second.
move forward. We have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Can we get the
Uh,
nays?
all those nay.
Nay at
Nay.
this time.
Nay.
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
All right. On to warrants and disbursements. Sorry, everyone. Just
No, you bitch.
um,
Warrants and disbursements, that's not.
Oh, is council
on my
assignment
packet
not?
Item
here.
14.
I'm sorry, my
Yeah.
items are off. Item 14. My thing's mislabeled. Sorry. The city council members serve on various commissions, committees, and boards. Each election cycle, and the council reviews their assignments and redistributes assignments as appropriate. Staff has provided a list of current assignments and recommendations that the council review each assignment and designate a primary and alternative representative.
Yeah, so hopefully you've had a chance to kind of look at the list. Each time we seat a new council, we go through your council assignments, and it gives the council an opportunity to kind of go through the list and see which boards, JPAs, commissions you have an interest in and would like to be assigned to. Obviously, it's a lot, and that's we have 5 commissions just in Blue Lake ourselves, and so this is an opportunity for you guys to discuss amongst yourselves which boards or commissions you might be interested in. We always designate a primary and an alternate, and we're happy to help facilitate that discussion. And we do have a blank list that we'll fill out once you guys make a final motion recommendation on those designations.
Do we just start firing away?
Yeah.
Okay.
However you want to do.
I've looked at the list and found ones that I'm available for based on my schedule, and so I'm happy to be available for the Ottawa Watershed Council. I'm not sure what the dates of the quarterly meetings are or what the times are, but mostly the Blue Lake Fire Department liaison and possibly alternate for the Sheriff's Department. Oh, and maybe League of Cities, if that's a thing that no one else. So it doesn't look like a commitment to time.
Can I assign somebody to take on this role of writing all this request?
Yeah, so Tony's
Great.
gonna be doing that, and then
Okay.
we can kind of regroup them as if you guys.
Michelle, did you want to be the alternate or the primary on the League of Cities?
I'll be the primary.
Unless somebody else is dying to do it.
How many,
Yeah, I guess I
primaries
did
does that
ask
give
that.
you?
Huh?
4 at least.
That's probably more than you're gonna really want.
What is?
I'm
Yeah.
just guessing, because sometimes those meetings get really overwhelming.
Okay, great.
But Why don't we all go through and do a first choice and then come
Okay.
back around for seconds and thirds?
That's a good idea.
Work our way down, or
Sorry.
you stop. You have no system yet.
Sorry, we're all new to this.
So I'll just talk primary right out of the gate. Our EDC, I'd be very interested in. The Blue Lake Chamber of Commerce primary for sure. Definitely want to. I plan on being part of that board if I could be elected, but I definitely want to be part of that. The Economic Development Commission. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. The Parks and Rec Commission. I was on the old Parks and Rec Commission, and I'd be interested in the primary or alternative, of course, or alternate.
Okay. What's
And-
your? Do you have a first choice?
First choice as in all these.
Yes.
Yeah, let's
Well,
do-
I want to keep it local then, Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Right out of the gate. Yeah.
Maybe we do like one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
guys.
Michelle,
then-
go ahead. What's your
Uh,
first?
What we do in Catan when you're placing your pieces, the first person goes, oh, good, other people. And then when it comes to the end, then you get to select your back so that you don't keep on
Okay.
getting the worst
Please
thing.
guidance. Please,
Gotcha.
please.
Don't forget.
Looks like fire department.
Hmm.
I'm gonna
So-
do local. I'm gonna do arts and heritage.
I'm trying to get my my notes here. Where you guys are
Arts
from.
and
Arts and
heritage.
heritage.
Where are you, Arts and Heritage?
I would like to continue on with RCEA.
Cat.
Well, I had an interest in the Redwood Regional Economic Development too.
Want to make that your
I
first
could do an
choice?
I could do an alternate on that. Definitely. Yeah.
All right, so I'll go for that. And
Unless someone else.
I've got here. Well, be driving to Eureka a lot. The Association of Governments. So those who both,
HCOG. So your primary there.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to do primaries and come back through.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks.
Right. Okay.
So I would like to be the primary for the Blue Lake Rancheria. There you are. Where is it?
I'm gonna grab the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
I think I have Chris down as a primary.
Oh, did you grab that first?
Did
I
Park-
think you got
I
parts.
think I've switched it to Park and Rec.
Okay, great.
No worries.
So, Chris, you did Parks.
I'm already
and-
going to be on it.
Right.
It's my goals.
I would like the Ottawa Watershed Council.
Nice.
Was there any board that the mayor specifically went to? I remember when I was on previously, there was. So
There's a mayor's select committee.
okay, I'll
Yeah.
obviously be on that, so I'm gonna take that one.
But that's like a bonus because it's an as-needed meeting.
Okay.
Oh,
So Chris is still picking one.
So as far as us, we still got the Economic Development Commission. Is that correct? And then is that everything Blue Lake?
I got the economic commission. I think the only thing we're missing a primary on is public safety and HWMA.
Who did we have for EDC?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if we have.
No, I don't think
EDC.
I don't think we picked.
I could do.
Right.
I could.
Did you say EDC?
No,
Yes.
you did.
Redwood Regional, yes.
No,
Oh.
you said
No,
Redwood
no,
Region, not
Economic Development.
not
Oh,
Blue
sorry,
Lake
not the-
Economic
yeah.
Development.
So I could do that one if
Could-
it's still open.
Which one?
The Economic Development Mission, is that still available?
Or an alternative?
Oh, so we do
Or-
have a primary on that. Sorry.
So Cat was REDEC. This one.
Could-
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Thanks for
It's
clarifying.
got EDC in it too.
Yeah.
Yes, so that, the Blue Lake
Chris EDC?
EDC, please. Thank you.
I would like safety, I
Well-
guess, for alternate, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
For which one?
Public safety.
Safety. Yeah.
Where you at, Michelle? Public safety.
You grabbed HCOG, right?
I'm not sure who has what at this point.
Yeah, let's.
Could
I
we-
still
oh,
have
oh,
it
Miss
written down
left?
except for
Adeline,
that last
I don't
Actually-
think we've done
round.
it yet.
Can we come to?
I have the old one. You'll need it.
I don't know.
You want us to read off what we have so far?
Sure, yeah.
So I have REDAC, primary action, Scott and Chris.
Wait,
So
Oh.
Chris is gonna be alternate.
yeah,
Switch.
Chris,
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
I want to be
And-
Chris is alternate for REDAC?
If y'all are okay with that, we're not an alternate just
Okay,
yet.
sure.
HCOG, I have Pat as a primary, no alternate.
Is anyone interested in the HCOG alternate?
Oh, that
Well-
was John.
John? Oh,
Wait.
there you go.
I think Cat
Okay,
primary.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, John.
Down at this point for Humboldt Waste Management, HPMA. Primary.
And
or-
we're not trying to fill that, we're trying to go back and forth and see what we already have. That way I might know where to look at
Yeah.
this point.
I show Elise as a Rancheria as primary.
I would like to request that we change the name of that because Indian Gaming Grant Fund Commission is no longer a thing.
Thank you.
So if we could just make that Blue Lake Rancheria liaison.
Got it. Okay. I would like.
RCEA, I'm showing Elise as primary. Blue Lake Chamber, John as primary. Public Safety, Michelle as alternative. Blue Lake Fire Liaison, Michelle as primary. Blue Lake Parks and Rec, I have Chris as primary.
We'll take secondary on that.
And you want second?
Sure.
Economic Development. It looks like I have Chris as primary.
Tuesday, economic development.
Ottawa Watershed, I have Michelle as primary. League of Cities, Michelle. Mayor Select is John, and Arts and Heritage is also John.
Before we move forward, take a moment here.
Yeah. I lost it at the end. I'm like, what?
How many does everybody have?
I think I've got two primary.
Michelle got 4 somehow.
Skip the word, Michelle.
John has 5 assignments.
Yeah.
Chris has 3. I have 2. Michelle has 4. Pat has 2.
Okay.
I would do primary on public safety.
It's in rack.
I got Park and Rec and I've got
Unless you want it.
Economic Development.
Yeah.
Is there another?
No.
Yeah,
thank
you are alternate.
Oh,
for-
alternate. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Who wants?
I would do alternate on arts and heritage.
That's a good one. Let's see. Alternate Vanuatu. It's an easy
Okay.
one.
It's going back this way.
Yeah, we're all in.
I think we're just.
Okay, we're just
Does anybody?
doing it.
Okay.
Mayor Select, there's no alternate for that one, I guess.
The vice
Need one.
mayor, probably.
Alternate for League of Cities. I'd be alternate for League of Cities.
Well,
League of Cities.
I'd do alternate
For what?
for Blue Lake Economic Development. Where you League of your alternate
And
here?
I could do alternate fire department if that's something y'all okay with.
Oh,
Y'all already have one.
I thought. Oh, I thought you'd called that already, Elise. But no.
No, I did. I did public safety.
Oh, that's
Oh, you
right.
did. Okay,
That's
thank you.
So you said alternate for fire department, Chris?
Yes, that's good with y'all.
okay.
And then Elise has public safety.
And do we have a primary on that one, fire department?
That's gonna be
Primary is
Michelle.
Michelle.
there.
Okay, thank you.
We need an alternate for Chamber of Commerce. John is the primary of Chamber of Commerce.
It's not part of the city government, so could I be an alternate and still be on the board of the chamber? Yeah, I figured so. I mean, I could do
Yes, you
alternate
can.
since I'm already
Sure.
there.
Sure.
Well, I'm not there yet, Justin. Just to clarify.
Okay.
I'm hoping to be. Thank you, sir. That's my goal.
So we.
Any conflict of?
Yeah, I don't think.
So I show that we need alternates.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to look at, I mean, if the city has any contracts with the chamber, we'd have to look at recusal
Okay.
for you as a council member.
Okay. Does that complicate things? It's up to y'all.
Partner on that.
Yes, sure.
Well, I think I only have 2 primaries right now, so I could go ahead and do primary on the Chamber of Commerce.
How about waste management?
But we still have, we have nobody for waste management. You're already running to Eureka twice a month.
Oh, no, well, that one's going to restore, yeah. So, okay.
Can I
HCOG.
trade HCOG Rachel?
HCOG for what?
Unfortunately, I have a card that mitigations, so I have a hard time getting.
Did you take HWMA? Who took HWMA? Nobody.
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 Who wants HWMA?
Spruce and Adeline. Yeah, they had it last. I don't really have a card, guys. Sorry. That dude.
What are the hours on HWMA? It's usually
That's
evening.
It's 5:30 in Eureka, on the second Thursday, once a month.
Alternate for it. No, I'll be the primary on these. No, I can't.
Thank you, Mayor.
HTMA.
That was fun.
Okay, who wants to be alternate?
Wait a minute. HWMA, where are you?
No, third one down.
Thank you. Oh, HWMA. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That was. And then who was
Transit, garbage, whatever.
One more.
So we need an alternate for that one, and we need an alternate for Rancheria Liaison and RCEA.
I could do that one, the Rancheria.
Okay.
That was the. Oh, wait, excuse me. Yeah, the Blue Lake Rancheria, correct? Yeah, I'm totally down for that. Please.
Okay, and HWMA. Anybody want to alternate for that one?
Sorry, who was primary?
Primary is
Dawn.
Dawn.
Okay, it's right there. Got it.
I don't know
I'm
if I
looking
can
at this
make
grid
that.
the wrong
I
way.
don't know if I can make HWMA work.
Okay, so maybe we need to undo that one.
I think so.
Okay.
So that's.
This is the strangest game
Oh,
of bingo.
I know.
It's Spruce is pretty heavy, but it's very much an alternate.
I'm gonna.
Mhm. Yeah, I've got 2 trips to
What's
Eureka.
Nope.
Thursday.
Does HWMA? Are you guys here? at HWMA?
Why don't we just should we let it ride until the next meeting?
I mean, if we, I think meetings are canceled for the holidays. If you guys want to kind of think about it, and give us a call on what we have to do.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to get to Eureka by 5:30.
Yeah.
People realize there is out there. So why don't we work this, and then we'll send you guys out what we have, and you can
Yeah.
you send some suggestions in, and we can work it, and then you could do a motion in January to kind of finalize it.
Okay. Thank you
Sounds good. Yep.
for that. Appreciate it.
And just
So this honestly, this is always the hardest one.
Yeah.
All right.
Anybody want to be my alternate for
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Kat's going to be my alternate on RCEA.
I am the alternate. You are the primary.
So we've got everything except HWMA.
So now I'm starting to see.
Do we need to make a motion to like adopt this or anything, or just like?
No, I think it'll come back in January.
Okay, great.
So there's something that's missing on here, and I don't know if we need it or not, but the agenda setting committee was something that we've been doing, and I was on it as well as Adeline. And we normally would meet during the day on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And I suppose that meeting could have probably actually happened via email, or we could ditch that committee altogether and go and set our agendas a different way.
Yeah, I think that's something to think about for January. It's not agenda. So, whether or not you want to keep that ad hoc committee, and
Is
if
that
so,
an ad hoc or is that a standing committee?
it should be an ad hoc committee. Otherwise, it's got to be open to the public every time you meet.
Right.
So,
and I'm sorry, Lisa, what was that meeting?
Agenda setting committee.
Thank you.
So, can we have somebody do it temporarily until we have it on the agenda for our next meeting? Like, since Adeline's not on the council, and we're going to need to set an agenda for our next meeting.
yeah, I think it can continue as, the mayor. Adeline was the mayor. Typically, the mayor is on the agenda preparation committee and has a pretty heavy role in determining what the agenda will or will not be. So we can either do, just the mayor, or the two of you can continue and work with the city manager on agenda prep. I guess it'd just be that one meeting in January, and then consideration could be put on the agenda for January as to whether or not you want to keep that committee as a committee. So.
Okay.
Go ahead and keep that until then.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to item, are we done with this? We can wrap it up and don't need to make a motion to approve. We're good. Okay.
No, we're gonna bring.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Sean.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'd like to pull, sorry.
No, go
warrants and
ahead.
disbursements.
Warrants and disbursements.
And meeting minutes, please.
So we didn't have, I don't believe there was anything in your pack for council correspondence.
Great.
So
I did not get anything.
on I wanted to ask about the check number 12452 to Wildland Operators. I'm assuming that's the bike park again.
That is,
Okay. And do you have a total of funds raised through donation for the bike park?
we do, so we have a specific fund set aside bike park, so all donations come in through, specific, project code so that it can be tracked and all expenses can be tracked as well.
Okay. And do you have a ballpark idea of what's in there?
$1,000 in that fund. We have paid, we probably paid out a little over 30,000 overall to pay for equipment, just mostly equipment, fuel, build.
We've probably, yeah, I think we've paid out close to that. We have about 38,000 in asphalt bills that we're fundraising against. We have 20,000 in the bank for that. So we're working with Mercer Frazier. They were kind enough to put us kind of on a payment plan because they know that this is a fundraising project, a community project. And so we're going to be making payments against that. And we've kind of just been paying off items as funds have been becoming available.
Okay, so a total coming in of donations around 20. So
we've had more than 20. We have 20 in our bank right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so 20 of that's going to go to the
towards the
asphalt?
paving. Yeah.
Okay. I would love to see a summary of donations and expenses for the bike park.
Sure.
I've noticed, I went back looking for some information on the bike park, and I don't believe the council ever made a vote to go forward with the bike park.
Oh,
I know we made I know we voted to go forward with some grant applications for the bike park, but I could not find a meeting where we said, let's go build it. Because I think at that time, I mean, it just was happening with donations of dirt and labor and
the
that sort of
council actually set aside the land for the bike park, designated the land for it.
Okay. I don't recall that happening during my tenure. So I know that that might have happened before I became a council member. But the item I found spoke about grant funding, but not setting aside the land. So that may have happened prior. But I'm just a little concerned about because I know we didn't appropriate any funds for building the bike park. So I'd like to have a good look at what that is. What our projections are for expenses and donations and whatnot.
Andy, what would
Yes.
be the staff time and estimate to have something like that completed?
Oh,
by?
it's easy. We could just pull it right out of MIP out of our revenue and expenditure reports. Because we've created a department fund and project for this, anything that comes in gets coded against that fund, so then it can be extrapolated out of our software really easily. So we'll be able to provide that for you guys.
And then the date, like, just so there's no question on like if it was approved or not. Is there like a way to like find that out
Yeah,
easily?
we'll have to go back through. I know it went through the planning commission first and then to the council for designation for the bike park, so I can go back and track that down.
Awesome, thank you.
Do you recall that being in 2023? Because
No, it was prior to that.
Any other questions on the warrants and disbursements?
I think that might be it.
Christopher, did you have any questions on warrants and disbursements?
No questions. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Just want to make sure you got covered.
Need a motion to approve?
Do we have a motion to approve?
Yes.
I move to approve. That's
All yays?
Second.
No nays?
Oh,
Moving on.
yes.
Great. Thank you. We're pulling minutes too, I think,
Yes.
right? Okay. So we're on to the minutes.
One of the minutes. So I did notice on the minutes on page four. There's a note that says Councilmember Scrofani leaves the room at 8:04 p.m.
Yes.
I would like that removed from the minutes as no other council members leaving the room are ever noted on the minutes.
I was asked to note that in the meeting minutes. You did leave the room during the course of the discussion, so.
I guess my
Right.
comment on that actually was there's no note that says that she came back.
Okay.
I mean, and
Sure.
because then there was more actions that happened.
And I object to it because council members leave the room on a regular basis. Chris Edgar left the room almost every meeting to take phone calls and go to the bathroom. And Elizabeth McKay used to go to the bathroom during our meetings at least once a meeting. And I don't believe those were ever noted as anybody leaving the room. So I don't know why it's different if I walk out of the room for a few minutes.
I mean, it just was something I captured as you guys were in dialogue and you got up and left the room in the meeting minutes because that was one less council member at the table discussing the item. So I don't know. I mean, is it?
It was council reports, staff and council reports. So there was no dialogue. Adeline was giving a report.
Apologies.
That wasn't during the time frame, I don't believe.
Maybe a suggestion. We either come up with a policy of like when someone leaves, just note it. And then, I mean, I don't know. But just maybe have it uniform across the board, I guess.
Sure.
Does anybody have a problem with it being taken out of the meeting?
I do remember it held us up for a while. I remember that we had to wait, and I'm okay with us going. We can go and do what that, but we should they can note it, I guess. But it did hold proceedings. But I'm not against taking it off at all.
Maybe you could just clarify, is it an important item to have?
I mean, the minutes are the council's, so if council wants to amend the minutes as presented, make a motion, take a vote, approve as amended or not. Doesn't matter to me.
No, I have a couple of questions as well. I didn't know how this works, so maybe you can provide guidance. When we list our attendees on council members, public presence, and staff present, but we have Justin here too. And I know he's not necessarily public and he's not necessarily staff, but should he be included in the list of attendees?
We usually try and include Justin. Is he not in?
I
And
didn't see-
sometimes there's lots of people and we can't capture everyone. And then
Because
actually Ryan
Justin-
clarified though that we actually don't have to write down who was in attendance. So I think what we're going to do as staff, we're going to talk with the Mitchell Law Firm about our meeting minutes and just clarify what needs to be in, what's necessary and what's not necessary, because it is hard to try and capture all this, and sometimes you don't capture all of it, or someone says, you made it sound like I said it like this, and it's just like, well, gosh, I'm just writing down quickly so I think we do need to come up with a better process for our meeting minutes, so that there aren't questions about that.
Yeah, I think minutes should be very simple. For example, I'm looking at item 7 on the minutes, first reading of an ordinance. It should be council engaged in discussion, public comment was open, public commented, or nobody commented. Motion was made to conduct first reading, seconded by so and so. Motion passes. Move on to the next one. Like a narrative of what was said is never going to be accurate. And it's minutes are what happened, not what was said. And so, I'm a big advocate for keeping the minutes as sanitized and as short and sweet as possible, even with public comment. I mean, all you have to say is the public was provided an opportunity to comment. You don't need to say so and so said this, so and so said that. There's a video of it.
Yeah.
If anybody ever wanted to go back and find out exactly what happened, there's a video. But I think the minute should be quite simply short and sweet. What happened ultimately?
I agree with you that the video is beneficial at this point. My meetings are all pretty specific when it comes to the minutes because they're not recorded. But I'm just wondering if my last name could be added to the attendance. That just says Michelle, which is fine. It's not Melissa, but
Yeah, and sometimes we don't know everyone's last names too. And I know, especially with Annalie and Tony,
sure.
I
Yeah,
probably
no.
know a lot more community members, but they might just be like, "Oh, I think she was referred to. I heard someone say Michelle."
But I would,
Yes, we'll get that
I
in.
would say that it does help to see that there was some discussion with a concern expressed regarding or support expressed. So those kinds of that's just my opinion. Then you can kind of get a flavor of like, oh, where do I need to pay attention if I'm going to look at the recording? Feedback.
Any more questions about minutes?
Yeah, just
Okay,
a
great.
quick one there. Item 10, Mayor Jones reads correspondence. But I assume it's customary that that correspondence would be attached.
No,
Okay.
that's in the packet.
It wasn't in the packet. It was presented the night of the meeting.
Yeah. No.
Oh yeah, that
We all
wasn't
got a
in the
You guys
copy,
weren't
packet.
on the council
but
at that time.
but there's no public record of that correspondence.
I think there was a copy that was more on the back table.
It's just like
Yeah, but that
electronic,
wasn't
right?
Yeah,
that-
and when council correspondence is presented, it's considered read and filed. At the time, it's read, filed. So, I mean, it should be a record of it. I would just caution against attaching correspondence to the minutes, only because of the simplicity of the minutes. Correspondence should be filed, as received and filed.
Well, certainly wouldn't want to put it where we have to read a little novella just to see what happened on that night. But it would be helpful if more than just comments, comment on social media, untrue commentary. It's really hard to see what may or may not have happened that night. I think there's a lot it's pretty sanitary. It's pretty doggone sanitary. And maybe my expectation is just that it could at least be a little bit more of an index that, oh, yes, I think I might want to, this would be the one, rather than have to go back and view every video of every previous council meeting to see which one might have contained an issue that someone is trying to follow up on. So I don't know where the happy medium might be.
So
This one
we're
just
only
seemed a little
required to
bit
do
like,
action minutes. That's
Mhm.
what the city's adopted. So we really have to be capturing the action so
Mhm.
that you can go back and see. But as far as the commentary, it's not necessary. And like Ryan said,
Mhm.
we've tried to do it both ways, and it's either too much, not enough, or you portrayed it differently, or I don't like the way I came across,
Mhm.
and I'd like you to redo it. And that's where we start to get into these problems. And
Yeah.
so keeping it, if you look at like Arcata's minutes or Eureka's minutes, they just list the following people made public comment. They
Yeah.
just write their name. They don't capture any of it. So
Mhm.
it's, it's a trying to find, we have this discussion quite a bit about meeting minutes. And it's a difficult thing. And sometimes you hear something or,
Mhm.
you go through your notes and you're like, how do I even capture that? So,
Mhm.
um,
What if we did a blend of the video and the minutes together? That way people could easily reference the two together and that way they'd get a full picture if they had further questions on something. I mean, again, this isn't a discussion for tonight, but
Yeah.
maybe in the future
Mm.
it's something we could look into
Okay.
that way. Everyone's satisfied with, both the written word and then the
Yeah.
visuals. So that way we could look at that in the future,
Okay.
potentially alleviate some.
There's also some tools, some AI tools that some cities are going to that record the meeting, summarize the meeting, and present a summary. I wouldn't substitute those for the official minutes of the city, but if any particular council member was interested in that, there is those services
Oh.
that you could, have your phone on, and it will literally provide you a pretty detailed summary of
I
it.
believe
It's awesome.
Justin's recordings can already, that can already be done through his recordings.
Thank you. Does any more questions on the minutes?
Well, it's only that we brought it up that you'll be meeting with Mitchell Law Firm to discuss minutes and how they're structured. Would that be something that the council, or would it even be appropriate for an ad hoc committee of the council
I
to
think it could be
participate
part
in
of their council training. Maybe we bring that back. You guys will
It's a good
be
starting
going
point.
through
Okay.
some training about, everything council related, and that could be something that we could go over.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Do we? What?
You mentioned the video, pairing the video with the minutes, and so I want to reiterate that I think we could do a better job of getting the videos posted to Actus Humboldt in a timely manner, so that they're available through our website and people don't have to find Justin's YouTube page to find him.
So
I've
I'm not.
heard a lot of people said, having trouble with the website and finding
Oh.
things. And so maybe a bit of work for me and Andy to do to simplify some navigation, but also, those videos, being with Access Humboldt would be a big step.
I think we could probably look at maybe make that a future agenda item, and then we can look into some of those things in the future.
I'm done with my questions. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone have any more questions on the minute?
Well, before we accept them, I would still like either that note that I left the room to be taken out or a note added that I came back.
Does the council wish to make a motion to amend that?
Yeah, I make a motion that we amend that
We have
to amend it that Councilperson Scafani did return to the room.
great. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. I watched it.
We have a second. All in favor of amending the minutes to reflect that or not reflect that? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the amended minutes passes.
Okay.
Do we have any other correspondence or items in that?
You're good.
Great. Let's see here. Reports of council and staff. Mandy, what do you have for us?
This has been a pretty busy month, and if you guys are okay, I'd like to kind of um, pass this one on to January and be able to give you guys a really good overview. I'd also like to extend an invitation if anyone wants to come in or wants to meet or go have coffee, talk about where we're at, what some of our projects are. I'm happy to do that. I'm really flexible. I live here in Blue Lake. I don't really go a lot of places, although I am going to be steelhead fishing if I can. So maybe we might have to take a walk to the river, but I am really happy to, go over things and just kind of give you guys a more in-depth briefing, answer questions that I can. Our team is also available. Our city engineer is available. Our city planner is available. And then obviously Ryan's available. The city attorney is a little bit different, just because he costs a lot of money, but we can work through that. So
Worth every
uh,
penny.
No,
we're all
thank you.
here to help help you through this process. So
Great.
So, I went to the Parks and Rec Commission, and we just mostly were talking about upcoming events for this month mostly. So,
Do you have anything?
Yeah.
Michelle?
I don't.
Nothing today, thank you.
Okay,
The,
great.
the pancakes are really great at the Grange. That on very good.
I've got nothing.
so we have future agenda items. Are we gonna wait until January 28th to have another meeting? Or would we like to have one sooner?
Um,
I mean, well, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot going on. It's not like I want more meetings, but I feel like I need more meetings. To just once a month just doesn't seem. I mean, that's just me. These meetings are so full, and 4 hours for a meeting is a lot.
Yeah, we're done.
If there was a way to shorten any of that by adding a meeting, I don't know, but
yeah, usually what we've done, so we reserve the second Tuesday of the month for a council meeting if you need it. Depending on kind of how full your agenda is, or if you need a special meeting, or if there's just, you want to do more of a, a working session. But this meeting is a little bit unruly just because there was so much going on and everything. But usually we try and keep things to 9:30. That's kind of our goal. But usually we kind of look through the agenda and say, oh, this is getting a little bit full. We might need a second meeting. So we definitely try and reserve that space. And the reason why we started going to one meeting a month too was just, by the time staff was we were getting out of a meeting, we were going right into preparing for the next meeting, and just we weren't really able to kind of catch our breath and be able to provide you with enough information to carry to the next month and to be able to even have enough on the so we do sometimes have to condense a lot, but we are flexible to have that second meeting.
Great. I apologize, Mandy. I wanted to jump back to reports of council and staff. Would us getting together with you, would that be like a working meeting, or would that be like a one-on-one or two?
However you guys want to do it. If you wanted to have a working session, those are a little different. We have to, if you guys are all together, we have to agendize that, and that's fine. It's not as flexible, but like I said, if you wanted to come in individually, you can meet in twos, just not in threes. And if you meet in twos, don't go and talk to another council member, because that's, technically a quorum. So whatever works for you guys. Like I said, I'm really flexible. I'm pretty much here all the time. So. And then if you wanted to have a working session on a specific item, we're more than happy to do that too. Because we do have some big stuff coming up. The housing element has been a big one. The Bottawatt project is a big one. The power plant, there's big ticket items that, for a small city, we do have some bigger things that we're working through. So whatever works best for you guys.
Great. So back to future agenda items, I apologize.
Is there any interest in having a meeting before the 28th of January? That was the question.
Yes.
Potentially, we could have a meeting next
I
Tuesday.
want one.
Next Tuesday? Where are we gonna, what about what? What's the agenda?
Oh.
What will we be discussing?
What?
Well,
A
we
week
could
now.
we could learn more about lots of things. For one, I think we need to make a plan for staffing, possibly contract with somebody to do some recruiting for the city, since Tony's leaving, and so now we have essentially 3 positions to fill instead of 1 or 2. There's probably a lot of stuff that we all need to be brought up to speed on, and I don't know if it's an efficient use of Mandy's time for all of us to meet with her at different times. And maybe it's appropriate for us to put our heads together.
I don't know. As far as holiday season, I'm pretty well. I got a lot going on. I mean, we could figure something out, but it's just a week before Christmas. Just seems like, oh, that seems like superfluous.
So
I think that I think that we could actually benefit from that meeting a week from now. If we are, and we're kind of getting into a critical staffing level here, that's a sense of urgency. We want to make maintain our operational
Sure.
ability.
I do want to make sure that we have some understanding of roles and responsibilities and where council and staff, where that line. So
And
council isn't involved in the staffing side of things. I mean,
well, we're
obviously, like,
city clerk isn't one. I
you
thought
guys
that was
make
his
an
accounts.
appointment, but it's the city that hires. And it's
Uh-huh.
a pretty important line to keep
Oh yeah.
ourselves not crossing. Um, because there's 5 of you, and if 5 of you start, getting involved in managing staff and things, that's why there's a clearly defined set of parameters for all of that.
Right. And I'm not suggesting by any means wanting to do that. Am concerned that we are able to continue to provide our services,
Sure.
whether there's people coming in or not. That said, I mean, would it be beneficial to revisit the staff report and that we might know where we stand with some of that?
Yeah, and
Have we ascertained a date for when we want to?
I know, I'm hoping you're talking about January and not December.
Yeah, what date are we looking at? We keep saying next week. What next week? Anita
Well,
knows.
I think a short meeting next week would give us some time to kind of get ahead of some things.
So I would, if it's a staffing issue, I mean, I mean, is that what you're thinking?
Again,
You
we're
want,
we are agenda
yeah.
next week. That's what I'm trying to.
We had some leftover agenda items that didn't make it on, like, so for instance, one of the things I wanted to do was have an ad hoc committee for the conversations with Ferndale for the law enforcement. I'd also like to propose that we have an ad hoc committee going forward with the power transitions project, so that the council, an ad hoc of the council can be in the loop as some of that information is coming in, and we can begin to process and be asking questions in real time.
I would recommend you guys use your second meeting in January, then January 14th. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to be ready to have all this prepared. I mean,
Well,
just getting this
not
packet.
necessarily asking you to prepare a bunch. Just a few items where we can, kind of set a few things up. Maybe a work session makes more sense. Maybe if the council wants to be together and be able to talk about some of these things, it should be more of a work session.
I think we'd need more to it to have a work session. I think. Is there any other items to develop a meeting on?
Does anybody have anything?
I'm not seeing enough with those 2 things to have a meeting.
I mean, I think if you look at the second Tuesday in January, that gives us a little bit more time, see like kind of what's coming down, um, I honestly don't think there's going to be a lot to discuss next week. I don't think staff is going to be prepared to have a lot more for you than what we have right now that I could probably answer your questions. And if you wanted to establish ad hoc committees and things, I mean, that clearly needs to be done through an agendized process. You guys will have your training, and maybe we could do a working session and then a staff council training with Ryan that second Tuesday to just give you more information and a little bit more substance to it.
Yeah, if we try to avoid doing the training at a regular meeting, I think that'd be advisable.
Yeah.
Sure. Usually I say I can get through it in a half hour, but inevitably it takes a lot longer. To allow for Q&A and discussions on various things. And so, if we did it on 14th, excuse me, as a working session, council training, and any other items you want to agendize, I think that probably work.
Well,
I mean, my schedule's wide open then.
Well, where are we? Where does that put us though with the power transitions? If I think we've approved to move forward with that tonight. But it would be, I think, it'd behoove us to have council members, at least in the ad hoc committee, present through that process. So
That's-
now that we've entered into that, it looks like we would have to have an agendized item. Otherwise, we'd be going until sometime.
It'll be at
in
your
January.
next meeting.
I don't
Yeah.
think there'll be much negotiations between now and January with the holidays. So,
So there won't be any?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's always discussions. We're always talking to them, but even with an ad hoc committee, it's going to be providing reports to the ad hoc committee,
Mhm.
and not necessarily direct negotiations.
So we're not involved. How many people are involved in the negotiation? And who is
The
that?
ad hoc committee will be met too, and that'll get appointed through an agendized item in January.
2 council members. And then if you wanted, we had talked about possibly having a community liaison as
Right.
well.
Cool.
Yeah, you guys just
Mhm.
can't have more than 2, otherwise
Okay,
you're
I was just making
Yeah.
sure it's not just like
yeah.
one person doing
No.
negotiations. Okay,
No.
great. Just making sure. I was just want to clarify that. Thanks. Let's see.
So, do we,
I
I
think
kn-
at the January 14th meeting, we could give you guys a really good briefing on projects. We could agendize maybe a couple things if you, and then have the training. I think the training's really important just so everyone has a comfort level with how, meetings work and the Brown Act and making sure that you guys have all of that. But it would be an opportunity if we did it more of a working session where staff can be a little bit more flexible and being able to dialogue with you a little bit more versus a real stringent format because this
Mhm.
gets a little bit constricted on what we can say and how and who could comment and you can't comment back and stuff, but a working session's a little bit more flexible. And I think that way I could prepare some good information for you. Like, we probably could put together some PowerPoints too to give you project updates, but I can't pull it off next week. Honestly, we're just slammed with the holidays too. We've got more events next week and I'm short staffed and honestly I'm gonna have a little bit of a panic attack if I have to pull together another agenda packet for
I'm totally down for the 14th of January if that's
Okay.
something y'all are interested in.
So we have a set of motion.
so,
Motion.
So-
that's fine. I mean,
Well,
second,
we'll
Lisa.
So we're going to do it the 14th.
okay.
So we need to we'll come up with an agenda at a
Yeah.
later time, correct? Are there any agenda items that we can discuss at this 14th meeting? Or is it
I would like to suggest that, either on the 14th or the 28th, we should do a budget review. An ad hoc formation for law enforcement discussions and also an ad hoc for, the power plant. I feel
or the
that,
battery pod project specifically? Okay.
no, for all the power plant stuff. Anything, I mean, and I don't know if anything's gonna be outside of that, battery storage issue, but we have other issues that we probably want to stay on top of regarding that property. And, oh, shoot, I had something in my head a second ago.
With power plant ad hoc that you're suggesting, is that separate from one with the power transitions negotiations?
I think those
That should
should
be
be
It should be the
separate.
same.
Okay, just
Same.
making sure.
Well,
Same, right?
it depends on if we have a community member.
Oh,
I just didn't know if you were referencing
I think she was talking
same
about
thing with a
So,
different.
so maybe one for issues with power transitions and one, I don't know. But have the ability to do both, 2 separate then, if we're gonna have, we're gonna be limited by having a community member on there. I'd like to, I think maybe the council should have something to say, not about hiring necessarily, but about whether or not we contract out to a staffing agency or something like that, because it seems like, hiring 3 staffing positions at once is going to be a pretty heavy lift.
I only have 2 positions.
Okay.
I don't think I'd support that. I think that's their job is to do that. And again, we would approve the appointment decisions.
Right.
I mean, we have the ability to go through a staffing recruitment and how that's within my purview to do that. I mean, we are recruiting, we're, reaching out, doing whatever, but I mean, I don't need council authorization to do that.
Just, are you advertising I know is it a finance officer
Our
or
finance
treasurer?
manager position, yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the
And
city
then
clerk?
Tony's position, which is an administrative accounting position. And the city clerk duties are kind of encompassed in that.
But you're
Because the
not
city clerk's not its own separate position necessarily.
so, but the city clerk, so it's a split position that you have with the city clerk? But you're not currently advertising for a city clerk.
We will be starting tomorrow. We just received Tony's resignation, so.
Sorry, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. I mean, sure. Service.
Yeah, thanks,
But
Tony.
yeah,
That's what
sorry,
I said
came up
too.
for-
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. All right. Thank you for y'all for being patient with the many questions as we get our footing here.
Yeah, and you guys still have 2 closed session items.
Right. Can we get a motion to
I motion we go into closed session?
what about the
Second.
approval? Do we have to approve these?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. We have a second.
Second, please.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All. Aye. Opposed? Nay.
Before we actually adjourn, I do need to call for public comment.
Oh, thank
Two
you.
items.
Anyone from the public want to comment on that item? Hearing none.
Julie, Christie, I'm sure.
Oh, I apologize.
Yep,
Julie,
I'm
Christie?
sure. Yeah, I can hear all the little comments you guys do to each other too. So watch your mics.
It's all right.
I'm just curious with this agenda item. I think it would be great that within the training that you're going to receive for Browns Act, if you're not going over what the manager's responsibilities are to you as the council, perhaps we could have that as an agenda item. That was my suggestion. Thank you.
Not sure I heard that.
Could you repeat that? I apologize.
Yeah, sorry, I've got all the critters. I would on the agenda, if it's not during the training for our new council, for Browns Act, could we have an agenda item that we are going over what the city manager's responsibility is to our council as an agenda item? That was it.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, bring it back to council for a motion.
Motion to go into closed session.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, and second.
Hearing
Think we should have an intermission.